If you're not making money playing online poker, it's not bad luck, it's your pre-flop game. And the players winning year after year, they mastered pre-flop and they take all the money off the table. Hey, I'm Sky, author of Preflop Online Poker, and I want you to succeed. In this audiobook, I'm going to give you the exact foundation that winning players rely on every single day. This is part 1 of the audiobook, with links to parts 2, 3, and 4 in the description down below. Let's build your preflop edge so that you can profit forever. Gambate! Throughout this book, I'll reference 16 important preflop HUD statistics that I use to profile and exploit my opponents. The names I use for the stats reflect PokerTracker 4's name for each. If you use a different poker tracking software, the names are likely the same or very similar. Each is listed here with its definition, formula, and additional information to help make sense of the percentages you'll encounter. The first statistic, VPIP, or voluntarily put money in the pot. The definition: the percentage of the time that a player voluntarily puts money in the pot, given that they had the chance to do so. Hands where the player received a walk, where everyone folds and the big blind automatically wins the pot, are not counted. The formula: VPIP equals the number of times the player put money in the pot, divided by the number of hands minus the number of walks. VPIP is extremely telling when viewed by position. This percentage equates to the range of hands, or the frequency, that the player chooses to play. Good players are positionally aware, so their VPIP will be higher in the later positions than in the earlier positions. You want to target and play against players who have excessively high VPIP percentages at 30% or greater. This means they play far too many hands to be profitable. PFR, or preflop raise. The definition: the percentage of the time that a player makes any raise preflop, given that they had the chance to do so. The formula: PFR equals the number of times a player raised preflop, divided by the number of hands minus the number of walks. A low PFR, for example 5%, means they raise a small and strong range, something like 10s or greater and ace-queen or greater. And I'll show you how to find this information for yourself in Subdomino 1.2. High PFR, like 30% or greater, contain all the strongest hands, but also contain many weak hands. Using the prior 5% example, a 30% range contains pocket 10s or greater and ace-queen or greater, but the remaining 25% is made of hands like pocket deuces, ace-8 offsuit, king-7 suited, and 8-6 suited. Look to target these players with calls or 3-bet steals if they fold a lot. Total PFR calculates any raise from all positions, which is a great indication of overall aggression. For more detailed information, look at this percentage by position to see where your opponents are most often aggressive. For example, more raises on the button than under the gun. The next statistic, 3-bet, or 3-bet preflop. The definition: the percentage of the time that a player 3-bet preflop, given that they had a chance to do so. The formula for this: the 3-bet equals the number of 3-bets preflop divided by the number of 3-bet opportunities. The smaller the 3-bet percentage, the more likely the player is strictly a value-oriented 3-better. A 3-bet of 2% is pocket jacks or greater and ace-king suited, but a 7% 3-bet contains pocket 9s or greater, ace-jack or greater, and king-queen. This stat is very telling by position. You'll find late position bluffers with high percentages in the cutoff and button, as well as frequent re-stealers with very high percentages out of the blinds. The next stat, number of hands played. The definition: displays the number of hands played in an abbreviated format. With fewer than 1,000 hands, it displays the full number of hands played. When the player has played more than 1,000 hands, the number is shortened. For example, 3.2K would be roughly 3,200 hands played. The greater the number of hands, the more reliable the HUD stats are on your opponent. 100 hands is a start. 500 hands gives a good idea of how they play, and over 1,000 hands yields very exploitable HUD stat percentages. Some stats accumulate faster than others and are thus reliable sooner. VPIP and PFR are counted with every hand dealt, so they can be relied upon after only 50 hands. But 3-bet then fold is only counted when the player folds to a 4-bet after making a 3-bet. This stat is potentially reliable at closer to 1,000 hands played. Next, note editor. The definition. While not technically a statistic, the note editor is one of the most useful parts of your HUD. Figure 5 on the Images page shows PokerTracker 4's note editor, but note editors in other poker tracking software work about the same. PokerTracker 4's note editor allows you to color code individual players, and color coding will be discussed in Subdomino 1.1. It changes the color of the line around the HUD box to correspond with the type of player they are. In the middle section on Figure 5, you can type in your own notes on the player. Your notes can take any form you want, but I recommend that they contain action items to help you make better decisions against them. And the bottom section houses the auto notes generated by the program. It lists them by street, and can include information such as what hands they made specific plays with, and how they act in different situations. For example, played turn draw aggressively. The number in parentheses indicates how many times the system has recorded that specific action. The next stat, big blind per 100 hands win rate. The definition, the net amount of money won per 100 hands played in terms of big blinds. The formula, big blind per 100 hands equals the number of big blinds won divided by the number of hands divided by 100. This is the most common stat micro and low stakes players use to measure their profitability. Winning players can sustain a total win rate at around 4 big blinds per 100 hands played, but anything over 0 is good, as it means you're not losing money. Divide this win rate by 100 to see your big blinds per hand. For example, if your win rate when dealt pocket aces is positive 1,000 big blinds per 100 hands, then on average, you win 10 big blinds when dealt pocket aces, and that's simply 1,000 divided by 100. The next stat, limp, or by another name, preflop limp. The definition, the percentage of the time that a player limped, meaning they just called the big blind preflop, given that they had the chance to do so. There are a few related stats to this. There are limp then call, limp then raise, and limp then fold. The formulas for these. Preflop limps is the number of times the player limped, divided by the number of times the player could limp. And the next formula, preflop limp, then made another play. This is the number of times the player limped, then called, or raised, or folded, divided by the number of the times the player could do so. Most good players never limp, and the weakest ones limp all the time. Isolate anyone with a limp stat greater than 10%. Some of the best whales to isolate limp over 30%. You can bully and bluff frequent limp folders at greater than 60%. If they limp call most of the time, isolate them in position with strong hands because if they ain't folding, we ain't bluffing. And beware of a low limp percentage along with a high limp raise percentage. These players are trying to suck you in with pocket kings or greater. The next stat, RFI, or raise first in. The definition, the percentage of the time that a player opened the pot by raising, given that they had the chance to do so. The formula, raise first in equals the number of times that a player raised first in, divided by the number of times the player could raise first in. This statistic is extremely telling when viewed by position. All good players raise first in more frequently as position gets later. Weak players have percentages that remain about the same in all positions, meaning they're not positionally aware. Anything less than 15% is value-oriented, while 25% or greater is chock full of bluffing hands. The next stat is isolate, or it could be called ISO, or raise with previous limpers. The definition, the percentage of the time that a player made the first raise preflop when one or more other players limped in ahead of their turn to act. The formula, isolation equals the number of times player raised with previous limpers divided by the number of times the player could raise with previous limpers. Less than 15% is likely a stronger range for value and with good speculative hands like suited aces and suited connectors. Anything north of 25% indicates plenty of weaker hands that will often fold to a 3-bet. The next statistic, 2-bet call, or call preflop 2-bet. The definition, the percentage of the time that a player called the first preflop 2-bet raise, given that they had the chance to do so. The formula, 2-bet call, equals the number of times a player called a 2-bet preflop, divided by the number of the times the player could call a 2-bet preflop. This is very useful when viewed by position. Solid, winning online players call very infrequently, less than 10% in total, and it's normally with pocket pairs, strong suited aces, and broadways, as well as suited connectors, when they aren't 3-betting these hands. The higher the percentage, the greater the ratio of weak hands to strong. You want to target players with excessively high 2-bet call percentages at 25% or greater. The next statistic, raise, then fold to 3-bet. Or in PokerTracker 4, it's called fold to preflop 3-bet after raise. The definition of this stat, the percentage of the time that a player folded to a preflop 3-bet, given that they had previously opened the action and had a chance to fold. The formula, raise then fold equals the number of times the player folded to a 3-bet preflop after open raising, divided by the number of times the player could fold after open raising. This is a better fold to 3-bet stat to use than the traditional fold to 3-bet. That one counts any instance of folding to the 3-bet, regardless of prior actions. In this book, you'll see me reference fold to 3-bet and raise then fold stats. These are the same stat, just different uses depending on the situation I'm discussing. Don't bother at all with the traditional fold to 3-bet stat. Most 3-bet bluffs need to work between 57 and 72%, and I'll cover break-even bluffing math in Subdomino 1.4. When this stat is greater than 70%, in the position they're open raising from, the opponent is ripe for 3-bet bluffing. The next statistic, 3-bet then fold, and in PokerTracker 4, it's called fold to preflop 4-bet after 3-bet. The definition, the percentage of the time that a player folded to a 4-bet or higher given that they made the preflop 3-bet. The formula, 3-bet then fold equals the number of times player folded after 3-betting divided by the number of times the player could fold to a 4-bet or greater. Compare this stat with their 3-bet stat by position. Target 4-bet bluffs against players with a 3-bet greater than 8% and a 3-bet then fold stat at greater than 60%. Don't use the fold to 4-bet stat as this counts every instance, regardless of prior actions, like folding to a 4-bet in the big blind. The next stat, attempt to steal. The definition, the percentage of the time that a player opened the pot by raising from the cutoff, button, or small blind. The formula, attempt to steal equals the number of times the player attempted to steal the blinds, divided by the number of the times the player could attempt to steal. Positionally aware stealers will have a sharp increase from the cutoff to the button, with the small blind percentage falling somewhere in between. The next statistic, fold to steal. The definition, the percentage of the time that a player folded when in a blind and facing an open raise from the cutoff, button, or small blind without any other players involved. The formula, fold to steal equals the number of times the player folded a blind to a steal, divided by the number of times that a player could fold a blind to a steal. Any player with a fold to steal larger than 80% is a great target. 100 minus the fold to steal percentage is how often your opponent defends their blinds. A fold to steal at 70% means they defend 30% of the time with calls or 3-bet steals. Multiply the fold to steal stat of both blinds to calculate how often they fold together, and compare this with the break-even percentage of your chosen bet sizing. This will all be covered in Subdomino 2.1. The next statistic, 3-bet steal. The definition, the percentage of the time that a player 3-bet preflop when in a blind and facing a steal from the cutoff, button, or small blind. The formula, 3-bet steal equals the number of times the player 3-bet when facing a steal, divided by the number of times the player could 3-bet when facing a steal. A 3-bet steal stat below 3% is a strictly value-oriented range. Between 3 and 6 contains value and some good equity defending hands, like suited aces, suited connectors, and small to medium pocket pairs. Between 6 and 10% is highly suspect and full of many weak re-stealing hands. Over 10% indicates a habitual re-stealer and needs to be fought back against with calls and 4-bets. Utilize the opponent's 3-bet steal stat by position. Some opponents love to 3-bet steal from the big blind due to the 1 big blind discount, but they mostly value 3-bet from the small blind. Others are opposite, and a third group steals equally between both positions. Know which one you're up against before you make your 3-bet defense decision. Steal then fold, or in PokerTracker 4, fold to preflop 3-bet after steal. The definition: the percentage of the time that a player folded to a 3-bet preflop after making a steal raise from the cutoff, button, or small blind. The formula for this: steal then fold equals the number of times the player folded to a 3-bet after stealing, divided by the number of times the player could fold to a 3-bet. You must view this stat positionally before considering a 3-bet steal. Ideally, you want to see the villains attempt to steal in that position at 30% or greater, and their steal then fold stat at 70% or greater. A 3x 3-bet steal needs to work roughly 65% of the time, and a 4x 3-bet steal needs to work roughly 72% of the time. Use these as your baseline break-even points to gauge the sizing you need to employ when 3-bet stealing. The first domino, preflop ranges. Before you begin your journey into preflop ranges, Subdomino 1.1 will teach you the importance of position and the 6 common player types. Understanding these 2 elements are critical when developing solid ranges to play with. You'll begin working on your open raising ranges with Subdomino 1.2. I'll give you my recommended open raising ranges, but more importantly, I'll show you how to implement the ranges in-game. Plus, I'll teach you how to create your own open raising ranges. You'll build upon this knowledge when I discuss 2-bet calling ranges in Subdomino 1.3. Understanding what makes for profitable open raising ranges will allow you to create profitable calling ranges. Things will really get interesting in Subdomino 1.4 on 3-bet ranges. Once again, I'll give you the ranges I recommend. Then I'll teach you how to use them in-game to take advantage of your opponents. The next Subdomino 1.5 will utilize the skills you learned when creating 3-bet ranges to help you make a solid 3-bet defense. You face multiple 3-bets in every session of online poker you play, so the more work you do off the felt preparing for it, the better your sessions will be. Subdomino 1.1 Position and Player Types. I'd like to begin with poker's 3 advantages. I refer back to these quite a bit throughout the book as they're instrumental in great decision making. Number 1. Positional advantage. Having position is the greatest advantage in poker. Acting last after your opponent gives you the most information to make your decisions with. You can't fully control this aspect of your game, but you can make decisions pre-flop that will lead to more frequent in-position post-flop play. Number 2. Skill advantage. The best players work to improve their skill advantage, which is the ability to make better decisions than their opponents. Better decisions earn you greater value with your best hands and cost you less chips when you're beat. Studying and playing with purpose widens the skill gap between you and your opponents. Targeting weaker opponents and playing against them in position takes full advantage of the gap between your skill set and theirs. And number 3, range advantage. The strongest players consider ranges over individual hands as they make their pre-flop decisions. A range is a set of hands you can have at any time, given your position, your style of play, and the decisions you've made up to that point. If your range of hands is stronger than your opponent's, you're making poker easier and more profitable. Playing a hand with all 3 of these advantages is bread and butter poker. I first learned this from Tommy Angelo's book, The Elements of Poker. Bread and butter is being in position post-flop, with initiative and a stronger range of hands, and facing 1 or 2 weaker opponents. The more often we're in this spot, the easier and more profitable poker becomes. This subdomino is concerned with the first 2 advantages, positional and skill. The remaining 4 subdominos will show you how to have a range advantage over your opponents. The positional advantage. Position is king. It's the most important advantage to have at the table. Having positions means you're last to act after your opponent's post-flop. You get to see what everyone else does before you make your play. Pre-flop, the big blind is last to act, while post-flop, the button has this distinction. Figure 6 shows the position names around a full ring table. Each position is also part of a position subset. There's early position, or EP, middle position, MP, and late position, LP. Figure number 7 shows the positions around a 6-max table. The names of the individual positions are the same, but with 3 seats removed, we now have only 3 early position players, 1 middle position, and 2 late position players. The late position are the cutoff and button. The early positions are the small blind, big blind, and under the gun. And the 1 MP player is the hijack. Preflop positions and starting hand ranges. Your preflop position will dictate the range of hands you voluntarily choose to play. In the early positions, you're better off playing a small and strong range of hands. This is because you're acting before most of your opponents, and you have to account for the automatic post-flop positional advantage they have over you, other than the players in the blinds. As your position gets later, you have less opponents to worry about, so you can play a bit more loosely and open raise, call, or 3-bet with progressively wider ranges. By controlling your ranges, especially in the early and middle positions, you're making it more likely you'll get to the flop with strong hands and in position. And when you happen to see the flop out of position, your range is potentially stronger than that of your in-position opponents. Your weakest opponents don't understand position, while the strongest ones think in terms of position religiously. Let's look at 2 telling examples. Figure 8 shows player 1, a winning player, with a total VPIP at 23.5%. This player's VPIP from early position is 11%, middle position 20%, cutoff 25%, and on the button 33%. It goes up as position gets later. Figure 9 shows a losing player with a total VPIP at 23.67%. The early position VPIP for this player is 21%, middle position 19%, cutoff 24%, and the button 30%. Both of these players play hands at the same total frequency, with VPIP at roughly 23.5%. But the winning player gradually increases their range of hands as position gets later, thereby giving them a better opportunity for bread-and-butter situations. Player 2, on the other hand, makes poker more difficult by playing roughly the same large frequency from the big blind through the cutoff and has a terrible win rate to show for it. The benefits of post-flop position. The majority of post-flop hands are won by the player with position. Being in position gives you more information to act upon, and information is the poker player's greatest commodity. Exploiting this information gap is the objective of every strong player's post-flop strategy. Here are 3 benefits of playing in position. Benefit 1. Bluffs work more frequently. Being in position makes it easier to pull off bluffs. Players hate calling bets out of position through the streets. They show weakness with each check, and you can use this information to your advantage by betting and barreling them off of their marginal hands. Benefit number 2. Control the size of the pot. Not every hand is worth getting your entire stack in the middle. If you want to play a smaller pot and your opponent checks, you can check behind. If they bet, you can elect to call. But if you want to play a big pot, either for value or to scare them off their hand, you can elect to bet or raise. And benefit number 3. Know the pot odds being offered to continue withdrawals. Pot odds refers to the ratio of the size of the call to the total pot after the call. We often compare pot odds to the odds of winning the hand or hitting a draw, which is comparing odds and outs. There's more on this in Subdomino 4.2. When you flop your in-position open-ended straight draw with 9-8 on the 7-6 deuce board, and your opponent bets, you know the exact pot odds you're being offered. You can elect to call with proper odds, fold without, or possibly make a bluff raise. The skill advantage. Sun Tzu once said in the famous book, The Art of War, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself, but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle." Poker is a game of people played with cards, chips, a bit of luck, and a lot of skill. The level of skill that 2 opponents have will be the determining factor in most poker battles. We want to target and play as many hands with lesser skilled opponents as possible. How do we know which players we have a skill advantage over? We learn this through observation and player profiling. There are 3 major benefits gained from profiling our opponents. Number 1, we know the weakest players at the table. We attack the weak and avoid the strong. Number 2, we can avoid tables and seats where the strongest players have position on us. meaning that they're seated to our direct left. If possible, we can choose a better seat or leave to find a more profitable table. And benefit number 3. Each group of players share common strengths and weaknesses. We can develop strategies off the felt that exploit their weaknesses while avoiding situations where they can use their strengths against us. We don't need to develop a massive history with a player to begin profiling and exploiting them. It's possible to categorize an opponent over only 20 hands. With this small bit of experience, we can already begin to exploit them based on the category they fall under, and over time, we can make adjustments as we learn more detailed information. In the Micro Stakes Playbook by Nathan Williams, he uses 6 player profiles that cover the vast majority of low stakes and micro stakes players that you'll encounter. This book will utilize these 6 player profiles, which are number 1, nits. These are ultra tight players. Number 2, tag fish. They're tight aggressive, but with many weaknesses. Number 3, tag. These are tight aggressive, solid players. Number 4, lag. Loose aggressive, solid players. Player type number 5, whales. These are loose passive recreational players. And player type 6, maniacs. These are overly loose aggressive recreational players. The player types are categorized by 3 characteristics: VPIP, aggression, and commitment. VPIP. Loose players love to see flops and play many hands, so they have a high VPIP. Tight players play very few hands with a low VPIP. Aggression. Aggressive players love to use bets and raises to either push their opponents off of hands or gain extra value with their strongest hands. Passive players are happy limping, calling, or checking, and don't often put their opponents to the test. When we look at aggression over these 6 player types, we're thinking about their pre-flop levels of aggression. But it's important to realize that most players play the same post-flop as they do pre-flop. Expect passive pre-flop players to remain passive post-flop, and aggressive pre-flop players to remain aggressive post-flop. And the final characteristic, commitment. A player's commitment to the game is demonstrated by how dedicated they are to profiting from poker. There are regular players and recreational players. The regulars, or regs, are the most common players you'll see in small stakes games in a combination of good and bad regs. Many of the regs you face study the game as well, but not as much as you do, and are actively trying to find ways to exploit you. They may even use poker software and a HUD like you do. Recreational players, on the other hand, don't take it seriously. They may be incredibly loose and passive, whales, fish, or stations, that are just calling too often to see the flop with almost any 2 cards. They can also be incredibly aggressive, like maniacs or donks, with no regard for how much money they throw out the pot with their stone-cold bluffs and marginal holdings. Recreational players aren't as plentiful as regs, but they're the number 1 money-making targets. For each player type, I'll give you the following items. A simple bar graph to help you visualize the relationship between VPIP and aggression for each type. Typical HUD stat percentages for each player type to help you quickly categorize your opponents. They are VPIP, PFR, and 3-bet. And I'll give you strengths and weaknesses inherent to each playing style, along with ways you can exploit them. The 3 player profiling statistics. I use 3 HUD stats to quickly categorize my opponents. These stats accumulate data with every hand dealt, so before I even play 100 hands against an opponent, I already know enough to assign them a player type. For each statistic, I'll give the percentage ranges for the various player types. The first is VPIP. Nits have a VPIP between 0 and 12%. Tags and tagfish, 12 to 20%. Lags, 20 to 35%. Maniacs and whales, VPIP at greater than 35%. The next statistic is PFR. Nits and whales, their PFR is between 0 and 8%. Tags and tagfish, between 8 and 18%. Sometimes nits will be there as well. Lags, between 18 and 24% PFR. And maniacs have a PFR greater than 24%. The final stat, preflop 3-bet. Nits and whales, between 0 and 3%. As you can see, when they 3-bet, it's value-oriented. Tags and tagfish, between 3 and 6%. Lags and maniacs, from 6 to 12%. And maniacs, greater than 12%. Occasionally, you'll see good lags here as well. The 6 player types. Most of your opponents will fit into one of these 6 classifications. The good regs are tags and lags, the bad regs, nits and tagfish, and the recreational players, whales and maniacs. The first player type, the nits. These are bad regs. Nits are the tightest players at the table. Many players default to this style of play once they learn the importance of position and hand strength. But this is a far from profitable style as they miss out on money-making opportunities because they fold too often. The small range of hands they play, tight, means they rarely see flops, although when they do, they often have a strong holding. But their nitty nature won't allow them to go beyond the flop with marginal hands. It's top pair or better for these players, and they will only commit lots of chips with solid hands. When they do choose to enter a pot, it's normally for an aggressive raise. They understand the importance of aggression, and they want to charge weaker hands to enter the pot against them. Common nit HUD stats for VPIP, PFR, and 3-bet. 6 max, you'll find 12-9 players with a 3% 3-bet. Full ring, 9-7 players with a 2% 3-bet. Strengths and exploits. One of their strengths, their tighter pre-flop ranges hit flops quite often with top pair or better. To exploit this, quickly ditch your hand when a nit commits lots of chips post-flop, unless you have an incredibly strong hand or a worthy draw. Now some of their weaknesses and ways to exploit them. Pre-flop weakness, they fold far too often, to 3-bets as well. To exploit this, steal their blinds and 3-bet them in position frequently. Another pre-flop weakness, their 3-bets equal great strength. To exploit this, rarely 4-bet bluff, and call in position with hands that can crack big pairs. A post-flop weakness, they're usually fit or fold post-flop. To exploit this, put pressure on them with multiple bets and strive for in-position play. Another post-flop weakness, they avoid big pots without the nuts. To exploit this, pound on them with aggressive pot-building bets. Now they do have a mindset weakness. They can tilt when big hands get cracked. To exploit this, when you suspect they're tilting, enter more pots against them in position, as they are primed for spewing chips with top pair hands. The next player type, tagfish. These are also bad regs. These are the other common bad regs you'll encounter. These players seem to play a tight and aggressive game, but they mix in lots of passive plays with marginal hands and draws, hence the fish part of their tagfish moniker. They like seeing flops with quote-unquote pretty cards, like King 7 suited, Queen 9 suited, and Ace 8 suited. They see the potential of hitting the flop hard with these speculative hands, but don't realize the downside and the difficulty that comes with playing these hands post-flop. Tagfish share many of the same weaknesses as the nits, mainly that they're too willing to fold to aggression pre- and post-flop. There is one important difference though. They play a wider range of hands, which leads them to hit the flop less often than their tighter, nit counterparts. But their fishy nature gets them to call down too often post-flop and give value with marginal hands and weak draws. Here are some common tagfish HUD stats for VPIP, PFR, and 3-bet. In 6 max games, you'll find 1914 tagfish with a 4% 3-bet. In full ring, 1511 with a 3% 3-bet. Here's a strength of theirs with a couple ways to exploit. The strength is they play more hands from later positions. To exploit this, expect calls when they have position on you and prepare for post-flop play against them before you raise pre-flop. Another exploit, 3-bet re-steal from the blinds frequently versus their cutoff and button steals. Now for some of their weaknesses and ways to exploit them. A pre-flop weakness, they fold to 3-bets too often. So, 3-bet bluff them frequently. Another pre-flop weakness, they call too often from the blinds with speculative hands. To exploit this, because you expect the call, seal with hands that have good flop potential like pairs, big cards, and suited connectors and gappers. Avoid total bluff steals like Jack 4 offsuit and 9 deuce offsuit. Now for a post-flop weakness, they avoid big pots without the nuts. To exploit this, pound on them with aggression. And a mindset weakness. They call too often with marginal hands due to their drive to hit their draws. To exploit this, size your value bets bigger to gain extra value on wet boards. And wet boards are boards that contain a lot of drawing potential. 7-8-9 with 2 diamonds and Ace-Queen-Jack with 2 spades are examples of wet boards. The third player type, tags. These are good, regular players. This is the most common good reg you'll encounter, and it's the style of poker that I play and recommend. Tag players are aware of their ranges and they strive for in-position play. While tight is in the name, these players are actively trying to exploit weaknesses. If loosening up preflop will earn them more chips from their opponents, they're more than capable of doing so. Their tighter and well-reasoned preflop hand choices make them tough players to contend with post-flop. They don't get too out of line like their lag counterparts. While at first glance they play similar styles to tagfish, there's a large gulf between the post-flop games of these two types. Tags fight for pots a bit more often, with both aggression and sticking around longer versus their opponent's aggression. They know that players don't hit flops all that often, so they aren't as ready to fold. Here are some common tag HUD stats for VPIP, PFR, and 3-bet. In 6-max games, you'll find 21-17 tag players with a 7% 3-bet. In full ring, 18-14 with a 6% 3-bet. Now for some of their strengths and ways to exploit them. A strength of theirs, they play more hands from later positions. To exploit this, expect calls and 3-bets when they have position on you. Plan for this and adjust your open raising ranges accordingly. And more on this in the next subdomino. Another strength of theirs, they actively make plans to exploit your post-flop weaknesses. To exploit this, try to play in position versus tight aggressive players. Now for some of their weaknesses and ways to exploit them. A pre-flop weakness, they can 3-bet and 4-bet too often. To exploit, don't be so quick to fold, and you can find great opportunities to re-raise them off the hand. Another pre-flop weakness, they fold too much to 3-bets. 3-bet bluff their open raises occasionally, especially in position. Now for a post-flop weakness, they tend to get bluffy. There are 2 exploits to this. Number 1, call with weaker hands, like second pair and mid-pair hands, especially when their sizing is smaller and you're in position. The second exploit, check raise or c-bet raise on boards that hit your range and not theirs. And for a mindset weakness, they know they're better than most of their opponents, and this can cause them to experience anger and tilt when they lose big pots that they expected to win. For example, losing with pocket aces versus 7 deuce off. To exploit this, when a tag is tilting, get involved in hands with them in an effort to profit from their bad decisions. Player type number 4, lags, good regs. These are the most difficult winning players to come across. Most of the lags you encounter won't be winners, but regardless, playing with a lag out of position does not make for easy poker, and easy poker is profitable poker. If you find a good lag on your left, tighten up your ranges or exit the table and look for softer competition elsewhere. Your win rate and poker mindset will thank you for this. Lags take advantage of aggressive plays, street after street, to steal pots and gain maximum value from their more timid opponents. But the lag style is the hardest to master. This is because playing wide ranges aggressively makes poker difficult. When they see flops with bloated pots and weaker ranges, they're often forced to rely on naked aggression to take them down. When the cards don't go their way, or their opponents won't give up, they tend to lose stacks quickly. Common lag HUD stats for VPIP, PFR, and 3-bet. At 6-max tables, you'll find 31-26 lags with a 9% 3-bet, and full ring, 27-22 with an 8% 3-bet. Now for one of their strengths with a couple exploits. The strength is they are skilled at using aggression to blow opponents off hands. To exploit this, expect this aggression and call with second pair and underpair type hands to catch their bluffs. Another exploit, try to play in position versus lags as much as possible. If you've got 2 or 3 to your direct left at the table, consider switching seats, if possible, or leaving and finding a more profitable table to play on. Before you call their raise from the blinds, know that they will pressure you post-flop, so choose your calling hands wisely. Now for some weaknesses and your exploits. A pre-flop weakness of theirs, they can 3-bet and 4-bet too often. To exploit this, tighten your raising ranges, call them more often or re-raise to blow them off the hand. Another pre-flop weakness, they're capable of steals from the EP and MP. To exploit, call them in later positions, and 3-bet bluff if they fold off into 3-bets from their open raising position. And a post-flop weakness. They tend to get bluffy. To exploit this, call with weaker hands like top pair weak kicker and good second pairs, especially when their sizing is smaller and you're in position. Another exploit, strive for in-position play against them. Also, throw in the occasional check raise or c-bet raise on boards that hit your range and not theirs. And they do have a mindset weakness. They don't mind fighting fire with fire. To exploit this, don't get into a bluff raising war with them. 5-bets and 6-bets ought to be reserved for value only. Now the fifth player type, whales. These are recreational players. The lower the stakes, the more whales you'll encounter. They're the loosest and most passive players, often called fish or calling stations. Whales make poker profitable, so your job is to sit with as many of them as possible. The dream table scenario would be a full ring game with you and 8 loose passive whales who happily limp and call street after street. Their passive style, with a propensity to call down very light, make them great value targets. But their love of calling makes them difficult, although not impossible to bluff. Whales play way too many hands due to their love of flopping something great. They see the magic in every 6-9 suited, Jack-9 offsuit, and King-Deuce suited, and are willing to play them from any position. Yep, playing with the whales is what I live for. Here are some common whale HUD statistics for VPIP, PFR, and 3-bet. In 6 max games, you'll find whales at 50/9 with a 1% 3-bet. In full ring, 35/7 with a 1% 3-bet. Now for a strength with some exploits. Their strength is their disregard for the money on the line. To exploit this, value bet, value bet, value bet. Another exploit, don't often bluff as they hate folding with any pair or any draw. Even holding one overcard or weak gut shot draw will get them to call. Now for some of their weaknesses and your exploits. A preflop weakness of theirs, they play too many hands from every position. To exploit this, get involved in as many situations as possible against them with stronger hands. Another exploit, value 3-bet a wide range, preferably in position. This also has the added benefit of isolating the weak limp callers. And a post-flop weakness. They're unbelieving and can call down with very weak holdings and every type of draw. To exploit this, value bet, value bet, value bet. And a mindset weakness. They can get upset when aggressive players won't let them see the flop cheaply. This can lead to calling out of spite. To exploit this, when you catch these angry spite calls being made, do not bluff. They're even less likely to fold. Instead, go for max value and try to give the impression that you're attempting to bluff them when you've got the nuts. And player type number 6, the maniac, the recreational players. Maniacs play as many hands as whales, but they play them very aggressively. As you can imagine, it's difficult to make this style of play profitable. When a maniac opens for 4 big blinds from middle position with Jack-8 offsuit, they're going to have a hard time against a good, loose aggressive isolation 3-bet or a solid, tight aggressive player's late position call. They tend to play by feel and put forth way too much aggression to win pots. Take down a couple pots versus their top pair top kicker hand and get ready for the spew fest to begin. Beware of having maniacs on your left. Sure, their weak ranges mean you've got a range advantage over them, along with skill, but their in-position aggression will make post-flop play difficult. You may have to tighten up your ranges in this situation, but stick around because maniacs can accumulate big stacks quickly and then lose all those lovely chips at the drop of a bad card. If you fold frequently versus maniacs, this will embolden them to raise you even more often. This can make your life hell if you keep raising and never fighting back against their 3-bets. Or you can tighten up your range and let them spew bluffing chips your way when you finally enter the pot with a very strong hand. Here are some common maniac HUD stats for VPIP, PFR, and 3-bet. In 6 max games, you'll find them at 55-34 with a 10% 3-bet. Full ring, 45-30 with an 8% 3-bet. Here's a strength and an exploit. A strength of theirs, they can amass big stacks when their aggression and cards intersect with some lucky boards. To exploit this, look for good opportunities to play against them in position and take advantage of their bluffy aggressive nature by calling down with decent holdings. And some of their weaknesses with your exploits? A preflop weakness is they play too many hands too aggressively. To exploit this, Call them with good hands and challenge them with lots of in-position 3-bets. A post-flop weakness: they bluff far too frequently. To exploit this, call with weaker hands like top pair weak kicker and good second pair, especially when their sizing is smaller and you're in position. Another exploit: strive for in-position play against them. Also, throw in the occasional check raise or c-bet raise on boards that hit your range and not theirs. And their mindset weakness: they can get tilty when they lose lots of chips on failed bluffs. To exploit this, look for signs that they're tilting like erratic play and larger bet sizes. Be ready to pounce for value when this happens. You can download a one-sheet with these 6 player types for quick reference. Just go to www.smartpokerstudy.com/v1-6-player-types. Table and seat selection. Your profits come from the weakest players of the table. Therefore, you want to face as many of them as possible. Weak players play far too many hands, or they give up on pots too easily. So these are nits, whales, tagfish, and maniacs. Also, money flows around the table from the right to the left. This means that those with position take money from those without, so you want position on the weak players. The ideal table is full of weak players, with the weakest ones directly to your right. This will give you the greatest money-making opportunities. But keep in mind that you don't want to have many loose aggressive or tight aggressive players at your tables. You'll be in competition with them to earn the weakest players' chips. You especially don't want them to have position on you. Choose your tables wisely. If a table is full of regs, or there's more than one with position on you, consider switching tables. And if your online site allows for seat switching, take them up on it and put yourself into favorable spots. Life and your poker sessions are too short to play on unprofitable tables. Choose your tables and seats in order to put yourself in the best money-making situations. Statistics to track this week. Open your spreadsheet software like Excel or use your poker journal and record the following statistics for your play leading up to today. At the end of your week of purposeful play and study around position and player types, record these numbers again and assess how your play style is changing. The first statistic, VPIP. Record this as a total percentage and by position in the EP, MP, cutoff, button, small blind, and big blind. The next statistic, PFR. You want to record it as a total percentage and by position. The next is raise first in as a total percentage and by position. Next, 3-bet preflop, total percentage and by position. Next, attempt to steal. You want this as a total percentage and by position in the cutoff, button, and small blind. You want to record your fold to steal stat and your total win rate, which is the big blind per 100 hands played, and record this as a total and by position. And also record your win rate when you saw the flop in position and your win rate when you saw the flop out of position. Play with purpose number 1. The following 2 tasks will help you purposefully practice the skills and information you're learning. Number 1. Attach a sticky note to your monitor with the following. Label and color code each opponent as a nit, tagfish, tag, lag, whale, or maniac. For my sticky notes, I use post-it notes, but a piece of paper taped up will do just fine. Attach this to your monitor to remind you to do it every session this week. Spend the first few minutes at each table this week using your poker tracking software's note editor. If they're unknown, leave them blank until you've played 50 hands with them. Then make a decision and label and color code them accordingly. Color coding suggestions. Nits, make them red. Tagfish, green. Tag, yellow. Loose aggressive lag players, orange. Whales, make them green. And maniacs are orange. Play with purpose number 2. At each table this week, on a piece of paper, write down all you know about the player on your direct right who you have position on. Look at their stats and any notes you have on them. What type of player are they? Are they a winning player? What is your history with them, and how do you think they view you as a player? How can you exploit their preflop tendencies? Write down at least 3 exploits. Next, do the same thing with the player on your left who has ultimate post-flop position on you. Ask and answer those same questions. Finally, ask yourself if this is a profitable table to play on. If not, consider switching to another table or switching seats if allowed. Study with purpose. Spend at least 1 hour on each task doing exactly what it outlines. This will increase the understanding of this sub-dominoes theme and will open your eyes to mistakes you're making or strategies that aren't being implemented correctly. Number 1. Review the prior 12 months in your database in 3-month chunks or quarters. For example, January through March, April through June, July through September, and October through December. Record your win rates by position for each quarter. Also record your VPIP and PFR by position. This study is intended to get the importance of position drilled into that noggin of yours. If you've been positionally aware throughout the past year, you will spot a pattern showing that the later the position, the higher the win rate, VPIP, and PFR. Study with purpose number 2. Create a report in your poker tracking software to find at least 5 of each of the 6 player types. Color code each player and label them by their player type with your note editor. Here are instructions on how to do this with PokerTracker 4, and Hold'em Manager 2 is similar. In the My Reports tab, select New Report. Create an All Players report. Add the following statistics to this report: Big Blind per 100 hands, VPIP, PFR, and 3-bet preflop. Click the VPIP header to sort the list by VPIP. Scroll through the report using the stats you added to find 5 of each player type. Add a player note to each player and color code them accordingly. Now, how you do this depends on the poker tracking software you use. And study with purpose number 3. Compare your bread and butter situation win rates versus other common spots. This is going to open your eyes to the importance of involving yourself in hands where you A. are the last preflop raiser with the opportunity to c-bet the flop, B. have position post-flop, and C. are up against 1 or 2 players. Run filters for the following situations and record your win rates. Do it again at the end of the week of study and play surrounding position and player types. Here are the filter details. The first filter is the bread and butter filter. You're going to filter for last preflop raiser with the opportunity to c-bet the flop, in position on the flop, and against 1 or 2 players. The next filter is the bread and butter heads up on the flop. The third filter, bread and butter 3-way on the flop. The next filter, called the 2-bet preflop and saw the flop. Record this both in position and out of position separately. The next filter, 3-bet preflop and saw the flop. Record it in position and out of position. The next filter, called 3-bet preflop and saw the flop in position and out of position. And the final filter, any limp preflop and you saw the flop in position and out of position separately. After running these filters and recording the associated win rates, what situations are most profitable? These are the spots you must try to put yourself in over and over at the tables. And study with purpose number 4. Start understanding your own weaknesses at the poker tables. Go back and review the weaknesses of each player type. Write down in your poker journal which weaknesses you share with the different player types. Answer these questions in your journal. Question 1. What player type are you? Question 2. How are your opponents most able to exploit your weaknesses? And question 3. What can you do in order to overcome these weaknesses? How must your game change? Subdomino 1.2 Open Raising Ranges. Developing preflop ranges allows you to take your logical and mathematical off-the-felt work and apply it to your on-the-felt gameplay. This simplifies your preflop decision-making. For example, if you know that King 10 suited is the lowest king that's mathematically correct to open with in the cutoff, then you don't need to weigh the merits of playing King Deuce suited through King 9 suited. When you're dealt one of these hands, it's a quick and easy fold. This frees up mental space for you to watch and learn from the rest of the hand, or switch your focus to other online tables. It's important to note that the money you make or the chips you earn in poker come from players who raise or call too much. By keeping your ranges in check and not letting them get too filled with junk hands, you'll have a range advantage over your opponents. Combo counting and percentage form. Using combo counts and percentage form is critical when discussing and analyzing ranges. Here's a quick primer for the uninitiated. Combo counting. There are 1,326 possible whole card combinations in No Limit Hold'em. We can break this total down to 3 categories: pocket pairs, suited hands, and offsuit hands. There are 6 ways to make any pocket pair. For example, pocket aces with the club diamond, club heart, club spade, diamond heart, diamond spade, or heart spade. With 13 ranks available in each suit, there are 78 total pocket pairs. There are only 4 ways to make a suited hand. For example, ace-king suited in clubs, diamonds, hearts, or spades. There are 312 total suited hands. There are 12 ways to make each offsuit hand. This group makes up the far majority of hands at 936 combos. And there are 16 ways, suited and offsuit, to make each non-paired hand. If our opponent has a 3-bet range of pocket tens or greater and ace-queen or greater, how many combos does it contain? Only 62 combos. The 5 pocket pairs make up 30 combos, and the 2 non-paired hands, ace-king and ace-queen, make up the remaining 32 combos. Percentage form. Percentage form is a quick, mathematical way to describe a range of hands, and it also relates to the frequency that an event occurs. Percentages are just parts of a whole. 20% means 20 out of 100. Out of 100 being the key idea. So 20% open raise means they open raise 20 out of every 100 hands dealt to them. If I tell you that Sam123 open raises 20%, this also corresponds to the range of hands he opens with. With 1,326 whole card combinations possible, open raising at 20% means he opens with about 266 hands. Figure 12 shows what this 20%, 266 combo range looks like. It's all pocket pairs, all suited aces, ace-8 offsuit or better, king-queen offsuit, suited connectors 6-5 suited or better, and suited gappers 8-6 suited or better. Every 133 combos is 10%. The 20% range that I just described contains 266 combos. 266 divided by 1,326 is exactly 20.06%, but rounding takes it to 20%. Stats can also show you the percentage of the time you take various actions. If you open the pot and face a 3-bet, your actions are to fold, call, or 4-bet. The total of these 3 actions add up to 100%. You might fold 50%, call 35%, and 4-bet 15% of the time. Simplifying poker, the KISS principle. This subdomino begins our preflop range studies with open raising ranges. Open raising occurs when the action folds to you and you enter the pot with a raise. I'll discuss raising over limpers later in this chapter. As strong and aggressive players, we enter most pots as the preflop raiser. If you run 2 quick filters in your poker tracking database, one for soft flop as the preflop raiser, and the other for soft flop as the preflop caller, you'll find that you are more profitable when raising versus calling. I live my life by the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. I could choose to create full ring ranges for all 9 positions and 6 max ranges for all 6 positions. But with KISS in mind, my open raising ranges are for a simplified positional breakdown. Early positions, cutoff, button, and small blind. Sounds too simple? Here's how it works. The 12% early position open raising range is used for the under the gun player through the hijack in both full ring and 6 max games. The 20% cutoff range is used for the cutoff position and for open raising in the small blind when the action is folded to the small blind. The 31% button range is used for the button and in the big blind when the small blind is the only limper in the pot. You may be saying, Sky, that's way too simple, and the ranges are far too small. I'll be bored out of my mind playing that way. This domino is about helping people use ranges who have little to no range experience. If you're an old hat with ranges, great. Use more positions than I do and add more hands. It's totally up to you. But by limiting the ranges to these 3, the 12%, 20%, and 31%, we've simplified our preflop choices, which leads to a simplified post-flop game, and that means easier decisions with every hand played. Keeping things simple and making your decisions easier is an integral part of a solid money-making strategy. Take a look at figure 13 on the images page. Once again, that was smartpokerstudy.com/POP1images. This figure shows how often you'll be coming in for a preflop raise at the frequencies I recommend. In a 6-max game, over 6,000 hands dealt, which is 1,000 hands per position, you'll be raising 21% of the time. This will make you a solid tight aggressive player. In a full ring game, you're raising 18% of the time at these frequencies. Solid, tight aggressive again. These ranges were all built with 100 big blind effective cash game stacks in mind. Any important stack size adjustments to the ranges and the strategies will be addressed as we go. The KISS open raising ranges. When you're first to act, or there are limpers ahead of you, open raise with the following ranges. I'll discuss bet sizing in a little bit. Do not open limp or over limp, which means limping after another limper, with these hands. Raising is more profitable, so do it. I'm about to present you with the open raising ranges I recommend, but first, it is critical that you do not blindly follow ranges. Great players use ranges as a starting point until they develop an understanding of their opponents and the table dynamics. Then they start adjusting them on the felt as they see fit. They expand or contract their ranges as necessary in order to make positive EV decisions. EV stands for expected value, and it's the money you expect to earn in the long run for the play you're considering. It's a very important concept that's addressed over and over in this book. Positive EV is an expectation to win money, and negative EV is an expectation of loss. Folding is a neutral EV play, represented by 0 EV, and it means you neither win nor lose money in the long run with the play, so it's a break-even play. Great poker players strive to only make positive EV decisions. Here are the open raising ranges I recommend with percentage form, combo counts, and some important information about the range. The first range, the early position 12% open raising range. You can see what this range looks like in figure 14. Here are the range details. It's a 12% range made up of 162 combos. The range contains all pocket pairs: Ace-10 suited or better, Ace-Queen offsuit or better, Ace-Deuce suited through Ace-5 suited, and then suited connectors 7-6 suited or better. When you're in early position, there are still many players yet to act. You're looking for strength and good post-flop playability here. Do not steal from the early position. Playability refers to how well a hand hits the flop and how easy it is to play post-flop. I'll give more information on playability when I discuss how to create your own ranges below. If your early position ranges are too wide, you'll be folding to too many 3-bets and seeing too many flops out of position. The next range, the cutoff 20% open raising range. This is also used when it's folded around to you in the small blind. You can see what this range looks like with figure 15 on the images page. Here are the range details. It's a 20%, 266 combo range. It includes every pocket pair, every suited ace, Ace-8 offsuit or better, King-Queen offsuit, suited connectors 6-5 suited or better, and the suited gappers 9-7 suited or better, with the addition of King-10 suited. The cutoff is the first steal position at the table, and you only have 3 opponents left to act. Increasing your range here gives 3 benefits. Number 1, you earn the best post-flop position when the button folds. Benefit number 2, you take down the blinds more often. And benefit number 3, when one or both blinds call, you're in position on the flop with initiative, allowing you to pressure your opponent with a c-bet for value or as a bluff. If you're faced with a button and blinds that don't give up, don't steal with the weakest hands here. Opening with these weaker hands are bluffs meant to take down the blinds. A famous poker player once said, "If they ain't folding, we ain't bluffing." And that player? Sky Matsuhashi. And now the third range, the button 31% open raising range. This is also used when you're in the big blind, it's folded around to the small blind, and they're the only limper in the pot. Here are the range details. 31%, made up of 414 combos. The range contains every pocket pair, every ace, King-Deuce suited or better, King-10 offsuit or better, Queen-9 suited, Queen-Jack offsuit, suited connectors 6-5 suited or better, and suited gappers 8-6 suited or better. Stealing is extremely lucrative from the best position at the table, so we must do it often. And having so many weaker hands mixed in with the strongest hands makes us more difficult to read. A special case, raising over limpers from the blinds. I'll get to more specific blind play in the fourth domino, but for now, I need to discuss which hands to raise from the blinds when faced with one or more non-blind limpers. I use a 7% raising over limpers range. And you can see this as figure 17 on the images page. The range details are 7% made up of 96 combos. The hands included are pocket nines or greater, ace-10 suited or greater, ace-jack offsuit or greater, and king-queen suited with king-jack suited as well. This is a very tight, value-heavy 96 combo range. You're often facing loose passive whales or tricky limp re-raisers in these spots. Don't make poker more difficult by raising wide ranges versus limpers from out of position. Strictly go for value in this situation. You can download a one-sheet with these open raising ranges by visiting www.smartpokerstudy.com/v1-open-raising-ranges. You can also find a link to this on the images page. An important note, make sure you're saving all the ranges from this book in your equity calculating software of choice, whether it's Flopzilla, Equilab, or something else. Figure 18 shows you what this looks like in my software of choice, Flopzilla. When you save it, give it an easy name for quick reference. Using the KISS ranges, open raising principles. I use the exact ranges above for every session I play. My ranges didn't start here though. I developed them over time, making small changes as I gained experience and my skill set grew. And again, it's critical that you do not follow ranges blindly. Just because you're in the cutoff with 7-6 suited and it's within your opening range, doesn't mean you must open raise it every time. The ranges allow you to bring your off-the-felt mathematical analysis to your on-the-felt play. Now that you know 7-6 suited is a fine hand to open raise with, you can concern your mind with other things like how the button and the blinds will react, if the stack sizes matter, whether or not the fact that the button just lost 200 big blinds affects the situation, or any other factors. There's nothing to say that you cannot tighten up your cutoff opening range and follow the early position range if the opponents to your left are making things difficult. Conversely, there's no one stopping you, literally, from using the button range from early position, especially if your opponents are letting you get away with murder, figuratively. As you gain experience with the ranges, you may choose to add or subtract hands. If you do so, do it gradually, taking the early position open raising range up from 12% to 14% may not seem like a huge difference, but the strength of hands you have to add to get there will reduce the overall power of the range. It'll also allow aggressive 3-betters and late position callers to exploit your frequencies a bit more unless you adjust your 3-bet defense frequencies. And more on this in Subnomino 1.5. If you find that some hands are not profitable, or you don't know how to make them profitable, replace them with other hands. Ranges are a flowing thing, and you must not stick with the same ranges forever. You're going to learn and grow over time, and your ranges will change and adapt to the player you grow to be. Also, your ranges will change as the poker world grows and expands. Ranges that dominated their opponents 15 years ago are not as effective today. You must adapt to the changing poker landscape to stay relevant in your poker career. Bet size matters. The bet sizing you use can influence your opponent's actions. Being that it's no limit, we're only restricted by the size of the stacks involved. Here are 4 general bet sizing guidelines. Number 1. The bigger the bet, the more you're risking, and the more likely opponents will fold. Guideline number 2. The smaller the bet, the more likely opponents will call or raise. Number 3. Bet bigger for value when you believe your opponents will pay. And number 4. Bet smaller as a bluff when you believe your opponents will fold just as frequently versus the smaller bet. This saves you money when it doesn't work. Standard open raise sizing. For most online cash games, players will open raise between 2.5 to 3 big blinds. This can vary by site and stakes. I keep things simple and open to 3 big blinds from every position. But in early position, I make it a full pot-sized open raise to 3.5 big blinds. I keep things simple and open to 3 big blinds from every position. But in early position, I make it a full pot-sized open raise at 3.5 big blinds. But, like ranges, I don't strictly follow this sizing convention. Depending on the table dynamics and my opponents, I'll increase or decrease my open raise sizing as necessary to better achieve my desired results. Here are some reasons to increase or decrease bet sizing. Vary your sizing to throw off your opponents. Do all of your opponents open to 3 big blinds? Make it 4 big blinds, or simply make a min open. You have an advantage when your opponents are confused by your plays. The next, increase bet sizing in earlier positions to limit the number of callers. For example, use a 3 big blind open when under the gun, and 2.5 big blinds in the cutoff and the button. Next, increase bet sizing when you want to charge the remaining players more with your premium hands and you believe they will call. For example, you're dealt pocket aces under the gun, and the cutoff and button both love to call preflop. Open to 3.5 big blinds, or even more to charge them. I've opened to 7 big blinds with pocket aces in the past, knowing that it would isolate the whale on the button, who just loves calling to see flops. Increase bet sizing to reach the pain threshold of the table. For example, if multiple players are calling 3 big blind open raises, then increase your sizing until you find the size that keeps the callers to a minimum. Decrease bet sizing with your strongest hands to elicit 3 bets from aggressive players. For example, the loose aggressive button player seems to pounce on min raises with 3 bets. Min raise when you want to 4-bet with your premium hands against their wide range. Or you could decrease bet sizing for your steals if they're folding just as often. For example, the 2 nits in the blinds fold at the same frequency versus 2.5 big blind open raises than they do against 3 big blind open raises. Do not telegraph the strength of your hand with your bet sizing, but look for opponents who do and exploit them. If you always bet 4 big blinds with pocket aces and kings, but 3 big blinds with every other hand, your perceptive opponents will notice and respond accordingly. If you want to use different bet sizings, do so by position. Here's a bet sizing scheme I've employed. Use a bigger early position sizing with your tighter range to gain value and to discourage too many calls. Use a smaller sizing in the later positions to save money when you're caught stealing. So for example, in early position, make it a pot-sized bet at 3.5 big blinds. Middle position, bet at 3 big blinds. In the cutoff, bet at 2.5 big blinds. And on the button, bet at 2.25 big blinds. Isolation raise sizing. An isolation raise, which is raising over a limper, is made with the intention of getting heads up to the flop against one player with a weak hand. They likely would have raised with a strong starting hand. We can also isolate over multiple limpers with the goal of either taking down the dead money in the pot or seeing the flop against these weaker players. It's called dead money because the player that put it in doesn't have a strong hand, or else they would have raised. The standard sizing is at least 3 big blinds plus 1 big blind per limper. For example, raising over 1 limper, you're going to make it 4 big blinds, or 3 plus 1. Raising over 2 limpers, you'll make it 5 big blinds, or 3 plus 2. Now for some reasons to increase or decrease bet sizing. Increase your sizing to more likely isolate the weakest fish who limped in, and to discourage light 3 bets. Decrease your sizing if it will successfully isolate the player regardless of size. Some players like to get tricky with limp raises for value, but they do this mostly with pocket kings or pocket aces. Some limp then fold a ton, and others limp and call almost everything to see the flop. Before you isolate an opponent, look at their total pre-flop limp, limp call, limp raise, and limp fold stats in your HUD to give you an idea of what your isolation raise will accomplish. Building an open raising range. You're free to use the KISS ranges above, but it's a great practice to build your own. Use the equity calculating software of your choice that allows you to view combo counts and percentage form as you build each one. Building a range is a 4-step process. Step 1. Build your ranges 1 position at a time, from the smallest range to the biggest. For each position, choose a frequency, or percentage, that you want to open raise with. You saw that I recommend 12% in the early positions, 20% in the cutoff and small blind, and 31% on the button. Use those as starting points and adjust them higher or lower based on your comfortability. Step number 2. Start your range by including the strongest hands, which are big pocket pairs and broadways, and add progressively weaker hands until you build to your targeted frequency. Here are the different types of hands you can put into your range and the order that you would normally add them. First up, pocket pairs. If you include them all, it will account for 78 combos, or 6%. Suited broadways. Including all of these will add 40 combos and 3% to your range. Offsuit broadways, these make up 120 combos, or 9% of a range. Suited aces, there are 48 of these, or 3.6%. Suited connectors, each of these adds 4 combos to your range, so having 7-6 suited through ace-king suited would add 32 combos, or 2.4%. Weaker suited hands, This includes suited gappers, double gappers, and suited kings or queens. And then of course there's everything else. These miscellaneous weak hands could be included in cutoff, button, or small blind stealing ranges. As you build out your range, you may find that you're unsure of which hands to include, like having a decision between King 10 suited or Ace 7 offsuit. This is where you can use post-flop playability to aid in your decisions. Post-flop playability refers to how well a hand hits various flops, and how easy it is to play beyond the flop. The more made hands and strong draws a hand can hit, the better its playability. I use Flopzilla to gauge a hand's playability. For example, King 10 suited hits top pair or greater, and an open-ended straight draw or greater, 37.4% of the time. And you can see this in figure 19 in the images page. With so many ways it can hit the flop, it's a better choice than Ace 7 offsuit, which only hits at 23.5%. And this is because it has less top pair hands and very little flush and straight draw potential. One final consideration is board coverage. For the choice between Ace 7 offsuit and King 10 suited, your range may already have plenty of aces with hands like Ace Deuce suited through Ace King suited and Ace 8 through Ace King offsuit. But how many kings and tens might you have? Pocket kings, pocket tens, Ace King, King Queen, King Jack, Jack 10, and 10-9 possibly. King 10 suited will give you more kings and tens, allowing you to better hit Broadway heavy boards on the flop. Step 3 to building an open raising range. Print and use the ranges. Use the ranges during your play sessions and focus your play around them. Take note of any hands that you feel uncomfortable playing, as well as hands you'd prefer were included that were left out. Occasionally, filter through your database and see how you're performing with the ranges. And step 4, adjust your ranges. After you've had time to use the ranges, I recommend a minimum of 10,000 hands. Make any necessary changes. Then print and repeat the testing process until you're satisfied with the ranges. Statistics to track this week. Track your VPIP, your PFR, also your raise first in. Track this as a total and by position. Track your isolation raise, also your raise then fold to 3-bet stat. Track your total win rate as the pre-flop 2-better. Also track the win rate when you raised first in. Play with purpose number 1. In every play session this week, put the ranges to work, but don't play them blindly. If you feel a hand is negative EV to open raise in a given situation, just fold. Be flexible and adjust to your opponents. If a hand falls outside the ranges and you choose to play it, have a very good reason before entering the pot. Number 2. In every play session this week, pay attention to your opponent's open and isolation raises. When you encounter one before it's your turn to act, look at the relevant raise first in or isolation raise statistic. Assign them a likely range based on their stat percentage and make your positive EV decision from there. Fold, call, or re-raise for value or as a bluff. Study with purpose number 1. Go through your database and find the weakest hands you open raised with by position for the past 30 days. List them by rank. For example, in early position, you opened with Ace Deuce suited, King 7 suited, Queen 9 suited, Jack 10 suited, and Ace 9 offsuit, King 9 offsuit, and Queen Jack offsuit. Now look at your list critically. Use Flopzilla to dive into the merits of each hand and check its post-flop playability. Is King 7 suited good enough to open raise in early position? What's the weakest suited king you can raise with? What about offsuit king? Your goal is to find the positive EV cutoff hands in each position by rank. Study with purpose number 2. How profitable are you with the different categories of hands? Run filters in your poker tracking software for these categories: pocket pairs, suited broadways, offsuit broadways, suited aces, offsuit aces, suited connectors, and suited gappers. This may open your eyes to how unprofitable you are with certain types of hands, while extremely profitable with others. And study with purpose number 3. Build the following ranges at the frequencies shown within your equity calculating software and save the ranges for future reference. Build open raising ranges at 5%, 10%, 15, 20, 25, 30, 40, and 50%. Build 2-bet calling ranges at 5%, 10%, 12%, 15%, 18, and 20%. And build 3-bet ranges at 3, 6, 9, and 12%. The more you work with ranges, percentage form, and combo counts, the easier it will be to use your knowledge for great in-game decision making. Subdomino 1.3 2-bet calling ranges. In this subdomino, I'll give you the preflop 2-bet calling ranges I use, but more importantly, I'll share with you the principles underlying solid, positive EV calling ranges by position. I want you to take these principles and apply them to your own range creation and to your in-game adjustments to opponents. 2-bet calling terminology. 2-bet. This is the first raise preflop. It can be an open raise or a raise over limpers. 2-bet call. This is the first call after a 2-bet from any position. A subset of this is the cold call, calling when you haven't invested any money yet. Overcall. This is a second caller after a 2-bet. 3-bet. This is a raise over a player's 2-bet. Squeeze. This is a 3-bet over a 2-bet and a 2-bet caller. This is a great play that puts maximum pressure on the original raiser due to the strength it shows and the remaining player yet to act. The first caller has also showed weakness by calling instead of 3-betting for themselves, so they're likely to fold or call versus your squeeze once the original raiser gets out of the way. Kiss 2-bet calling ranges. There are 11 different 2-bet calling ranges, and each is intended to be used in one position versus another position. For example, the first range below is used when in the early position versus an early position open raise. I'll show you each range, give you the combo counts and percentage form, the preflop equity each range has, and give you possible on-the-felt adjustments to make. Calling ranges are dependent on the opener's range, and I created these ranges to play against the open raising ranges from the prior subdomino. For example, as I built the first range below for calling in the EP versus an EP 2-bet, I used hold EQ. Remember, this is an equity calculator that works in conjunction with Flopzilla. I used hold EQ to determine that the calling range I created has about 53% preflop equity against the opening range. And you can see this in figure 20 on the images page. Pay attention to the value 3-bet ranges associated with each 2-bet calling range. They are the unhighlighted strong hands, like kings or better and ace-king, in the upper left quadrant of each upcoming figure. I'll cover 3-betting ranges in the next subdomino, both for value and as bluffs, but this gives you a sneak peek into what hands I think are worthy of 3-betting for value. The first range, early position calling versus an early position 2-bet. Here are the range details. 4.4%, made up of 58 combos. The calling hands are jacks through 7s, ace-queen offsuit, ace-queen suited through ace-jack suited, king-queen suited, and queen-jack suited. This range has 53% preflop equity versus the early position 12% open raising range. And please test this for yourself using an equity calculator. With this calling range, you're 3-betting for value, queens or greater, and ace-king. This is a tight calling range for 3 reasons. Reason 1, most early position raises are from a strong and small range, so calling too loosely gives the early position opener a great range advantage. Reason 2, we have many players still to act when calling in early position. Our call can often cause a cascade of calls, resulting in multi-way pots which are harder to win. And reason 3, our call can entice a loose aggressive or tight aggressive player to 3-bet squeeze, charging us more to see the flop. The next range, the cutoff calling range versus an early position 2-bet. You can see this as figure 22. Here are the range details. 6.2%, 82 combos. The range consists of pocket jacks down through pocket 5s, ace-queen, ace-jack suited, king-jack suited, and suited connectors king-queen suited down through 10-9 suited. It has 51% preflop equity versus the early position 12% open raising range. And with this calling range, you're 3-betting for value, pocket queens or greater, and ace-king. This is slightly looser than the prior range because in the cutoff, you only have 3 players to contend with after making the call, so there's less of a squeeze concern. But it's still facing an early position 2-bet, so you must remain tight. The next range, the button calling range versus an early position 2-bet. You can see this as figure 23. Here are the range details. 9.7%, made up of 128 combos. The range consists of pocket jacks down through pocket deuces, ace-10 suited or better, ace-jack offsuit and ace-queen offsuit, king-queen, king-jack suited, and queen-jack suited down through 10-9 suited. This range has 47% preflop equity versus the early position 12% open raising range. And I'll discuss what that preflop equity means in just a little bit. With this calling range, you're 3-betting for value with pocket queens or greater and ace-king. This is the widest calling range against an early position 2-bet because you have the best post-flop position, and now there are only 2 players in the blinds left to act. The next range, the button calling range versus a cutoff 2-bet. You can see this as figure 24. Here are the range details. 9.4% made of 124 combos. This range contains pocket 9s down through pocket deuces, ace-jack offsuit, king-queen offsuit, ace-jack suited through ace-9 suited, king-queen suited through king-10 suited, suited connectors queen-jack suited down through 9-8 suited, and queen-10 suited down through 10-8 suited. This range has 47% preflop equity versus the cutoff 20% open raising range. With this calling range, you're 3-betting for value, pocket 10s or greater, and ace-queen or greater. You're calling 4 combos less here against the cutoff than against the early position, but your value 3-bet range has increased dramatically. You're facing a likely steal, so this gives you more room for aggressive plays. There are still only the 2 blinds to contend with, and you'll have ultimate post-flop position. The next range, the small blind calling range versus an early position 2-bet. You can see this as figure 25. Here are the range details. 2.9% made of 38 combos. The range consists of pocket queens down through pocket 8s, ace-queen suited, and king-queen suited. It has 59% preflop equity versus the early position 12% open raising range. With this calling range, you are 3-betting for value with pocket kings or greater and ace-king. This is the smallest of all calling ranges because you're calling versus a likely strong early position range, and you have the worst post-flop position. There's also still one player yet to act, the big blind. Your call here shows much weakness, and with one big blind already invested, the big blind player is getting a discount on any call or a 3-bet they choose to make. The next range, small blind calling versus a cutoff 2-bet. You can see this as figure 26. Here are the range details. 3.3%, made of 44 combos. The range contains pocket 10s down through pocket 7s, ace-jack offsuit, ace-jack suited, and king-queen suited. This range has 55% preflop equity versus the cutoff 20% open raising range. With this calling range, you're 3-betting for value with pocket jacks or greater and ace-queen or greater. This small blind calling range is slightly larger due to your opponent having a wider range in the cutoff, which is the first steal position. And because they're opening so much wider, your 3-bet value range has expanded. The next range, the small blind calling range versus a button 2-bet. You can see this as figure 27. Here are the range details. It's a 5.7%, 76 combo range. It's made of 9s through 6s, ace-jack offsuit, ace-10 offsuit, king-queen offsuit, ace-10 suited, king-jack suited, queen-jack suited, and jack-10 suited. With this calling range, you're 3-betting for value, pocket 10s or greater, ace-jack suited or greater, ace-queen offsuit or greater, and king-queen suited. Button open raises are largely steals, so this is the widest small blind calling range. It's not too wide though, because calling gives the button opener positional advantage. It's pocket pair and big card heavy, which makes it more likely to hit flops and has the ability to contend with post-flop button aggression. The next range, the big blind calling range versus an early position 2-bet. You can see this as figure 28. Here are the range details. 6.3%, made of 84 combos. It contains queens down through pocket 5s, ace-queen offsuit, ace-queen suited through ace-10 suited, king-queen suited, king-jack suited, and queen-jack suited. This range has 52% preflop equity versus the early position 12% open raising range. And when calling with this range, you're 3-betting for value with pocket kings or greater and ace-king. When you end the action by calling in the big blind, you can afford to call a few more hands, but you're still voluntarily putting money in the pot to go post-flop out of position versus a tight early position range, and those are two big disadvantages. The next range, the big blind calling range versus a cutoff 2-bet. You can see this as figure 29. Here are the range details. 8.3% made of 110 combos. The range contains pocket 10s down through pocket deuces, ace-jack offsuit, king-queen offsuit, ace-jack suited and ace-10 suited, king-queen suited and king-jack suited, and then suited connectors, queen-jack suited down through 9-8 suited. This range has 49% preflop equity versus the cutoff 20% open raising range. And when you're calling with this range, you're 3-betting for value pocket jacks or greater and ace-queen or greater. This calling range is wider due to your opponent opening from a steal position. The 3-bet value range is the same as when in the small blind facing a cutoff open raise. The next range, the big blind calling range versus a button 2-bet. You can see this as figure 30. Here are the range details. 11.8% made of 156 combos. This range contains pocket 9s down through deuces, ace-jack offsuit through ace-10 offsuit, king-queen offsuit and king-jack offsuit, queen-jack offsuit, ace-10 suited through ace-8 suited, king-jack suited and king-10 suited, and then suited connectors queen-jack suited down through 9-8 suited, and suited gappers queen-10 suited down through 10-8 suited. This range has 50% preflop equity versus the button 31% open raising range. When you're calling with this range, you're 3-betting for value with pocket 10s or greater, ace-jack suited or greater, ace-queen offsuit or greater, and king-queen suited. You're calling very often here with many Broadway and suited hands. This is great to fight back against a wide button open raising range. The 3-bet range has expanded to include pocket 10s, ace-jack suited, and king-queen suited. And the final calling range, the big blind calling range versus a small blind 2-bet. You can see this as figure 31. Here are the range details. 13.3% made of 176 combos. The hands within it are 9s through deuces, ace-10 offsuit, king-jack offsuit and queen-jack offsuit, and then king-10 offsuit, queen-10 offsuit, and jack-10 offsuit, ace-10 suited through ace-8 suited, king-jack suited and king-10 suited, and then suited connectors queen-jack suited down through 8-7 suited, and suited gappers queen-10 suited down through 9-7 suited. This range has 45% preflop equity versus the small blind 20% open raising range. When calling with this range, you are 3-betting for value with pocket 10s or greater, ace-jack or greater, and king-queen. This is the widest 2-bet calling range and the widest 3-bet value range. Many players have button-sized open raising ranges when it's folded to them in the small blind, and because you have position, you can take advantage of this with lots of calls and aggressive 3-bets. Assuming there are no limpers, your calling action guarantees you see the flop in position. You can download a one-sheet with these 2-bet calling ranges by going here, www.smartpokerstudy.com/v1-2bet-calling-ranges. And you can find this link on the images page as well. Range equity realization. I use the term preflop equity in all of the range versus range equity calculations just mentioned. You must understand that this preflop equity doesn't mean the specific range will win the hand this percentage of the time. Instead, it's the chance of the hand winning preflop without any board cards or actions taken into account. Everything changes as soon as the flop hits. Figure 31 just mentioned showed a big blind calling range. This range has 45% preflop equity against the small blind open raising range. But what happens on a board of 10-7-3 rainbow? Figure 32 shows how equity suddenly flips and the calling range is now an equity favorite at 53%. The calling range may now realize more than its preflop equity because it connects so well with this board. And the fact that the big blind has position in this hand, it may be able to realize its equity even more than that due to its positional advantage. And what if the board came ace, ace, 6 rainbow? Figure 33 shows that on this flop, the big blind calling range is even more of an equity dog at 32.5%, so there's less of a chance that it will realize its preflop equity and win the hand. That doesn't mean it can't win, just that it's less likely to win. Flop, turn, and river actions can change everything, as well as the turn and river cards that hit the board. Plus, if the small blind has post-flop leaks the big blind can take advantage of, like fit or fold play on the flop, the big blind can use some strategic aggression to take the pot down. So equities shift when the flop hits, and good equity can suddenly go bad, and vice versa. Don't rely on the equity your hand has when calling pre-flop. This is a tool in your arsenal to see if the range you're playing has the requisite equity to call based on the pot odds you're being offered. Additionally, position and post-flop skills may increase your chances of realizing your equity and winning the hand. Using the KISS ranges, 2-bet calling principles. There are many things to consider before calling any preflop 2-bet. Your weakest opponents only think about how pretty their hand is and what they hope to hit on the flop. You are better than this, and you make decisions based on the expected EV of the potential call. The following principles will help you make profitable, on-the-felt 2-bet calling decisions with your ranges. On-the-fly range adjusting. You won't get yourself into trouble if you stick 100% to the KISS ranges I gave you, and in fact, you'll often have an equity advantage over your opponent. But poker is situational, and there are many factors that can make it more positive EV to widen or tighten your calling range when on the felt. Here are some reasons to widen your calling range. When you're last to act. This often happens in the big blind, but sometimes you can be reasonably sure that the players remaining will fold. When you're last to act, you know the exact pot odds being offered for your call, and there's no 3-bet to worry about. When you're against a loose aggressive opener. Lags have wide open raising ranges, so you can call with more hands for value. When you're facing smaller bets. Smaller bets mean greater pot odds offered to you, so you can call with more speculative hands. Another reason to widen your calling range is when multiple prior callers are involved. More callers means bigger pots with more favorable pot odds for calling. And the final reason to widen your calling range is the opener has post-flop weaknesses you can exploit. If they're honest on a particular street or extremely fit or fold on the flop, call wider to take advantage of any hesitation they show when that flop hits. Now for some reasons to tighten your calling range. Reason 1, a high squeeze risk. Aggressive players have a great opportunity to collect your calling chips with a big 3-bet squeeze. You've shown weakness by calling, and the loose aggressive, tight aggressive, and maniacs can profit from this. You can always take away their chance at squeezing by folding or 3-betting for yourself. The next reason to tighten, you're up against a nit opener. They have small and strong ranges, so you don't want to call with dominated hands. If the nit is only raising with ace-king and ace-queen, then calling with ace-jack or worse is a negative EV play. Another reason to tighten your range, you're facing larger bets. Larger bets give worse pot odds, so your hand needs to have more preflop equity to profitably call. Another reason to tighten, multiple prior callers. More callers make it more difficult to win the pot post-flop unless you hit a monster. If your hand plays better against fewer people, call less often. Examples of this are offsuit aces, suited kings and queens, and medium pocket pairs. Another reason to tighten your range, facing a post-flop aggressive player from out of position. Playing out of position against aggressive post-flop players makes poker more difficult on you. By calling here, you've allowed them to be in a bread-and-butter situation against you. And the final reason to tighten your range, when you're unsure. If you're ever in doubt about the profitability of making a call, fold the hand and tag it for future review. Folding preflop is a neutral EV decision, so it's better to err on the side of caution if you think it may be an unprofitable call. Fold, call, or raise. With every open raise you face, you have 3 choices: fold, call, or raise. Folding is neutral EV. You don't win or lose any chips. This is true of the blinds as well. The blind money you put in belongs to the pot and is not yours anymore. If you treat it like it's yours, this could cause you to defend your blinds in negative EV situations just because you don't want to, quote-unquote, lose that blind money. Calling or raising can be positive or negative EV. We can look at our chances on an EV spectrum, with neutral EV in the center. the bottom of our calling range must be just to the right of the neutral EV line on the positive side. If we have a choice between calling or raising, we must choose the most positive EV play, and at all times avoid negative EV plays. Figure 34 shows the EV spectrum, with neutral EV in the middle. On the left are negative EV plays which must be avoided, and on the right, anything to the right of that neutral EV is positive EV, and you should choose the highest EV option. Here's an example scenario: to call the 2-bet, 3-bet, or fold with ace-jack suited. An under-the-gun, tight aggressive villain open raises to 3 big blinds. Their stats: 15-11 with a 3% 3-bet, and an under-the-gun raise first in of 10%. It folds around to hero in the big blind with ace-jack suited. Hero can call the 2-bet, 3-bet, or fold. What's the most positive EV play hero can make? Let's consider hero's options. 3-betting this villain would achieve the opposite of what hero wants. All worse hands like ace-10 suited, ace-jack offsuit, king-jack suited, and suited connectors would probably fold, and only better hands would call or 4-bet, like big pocket pairs and ace-queen or ace-king. So 3-betting is a negative EV play. That leaves calling or folding. Calling with ace-jack suited means hero only needs 31% pre-flop equity to break even. How do we know this? When considering a call, we utilize the pot odds being offered as the break-even equity needed for a call. The break-even formula is the break-even percentage equals the amount of the call divided by the total pot plus the amount of the call. Hero has to call 2 big blinds to win the total pot of 6.5 big blinds after his call. This means hero needs 31% preflop equity for a break-even call, which is simply 2 divided by 6.5. Ace-jack suited against a 10% open raising range has 46% preflop equity. That's more than enough to justify a call, and folding is out of the question with such good equity in this spot. Because 3-betting is negative EV, calling is positive EV, and folding is neutral EV, the best option for hero is to call with ace-jack suited. No open, no call. Calling ranges must contain hands that are within your open raising range for that position. If a hand isn't worth raising in that position, then it's definitely not worth calling. When you raise, you have fold equity and post-flop potential for the hand. When calling, you only have the post-flop potential to rely on. And fold equity is the equity a player earns when their opponent folds to a bet. You, quote, capped your range, unquote. By calling your opponent's 2-bet, you've effectively told them you don't have aces or kings. You've capped your range by calling. This isn't a terrible thing, but it does give your opponent a perceived range advantage. Because of this, it's a good idea to occasionally call with pocket aces or pocket kings. Calling with such dominating hands has the benefit of strengthening your perceived calling range. If your opponents see at showdown that you had aces or kings when you called pre-flop, they'll always be concerned that you could have it again when calling in the future. If you want to occasionally call with these hands, decide ahead of time which suit combos you'd like to use. If you want to call 1/6 of the time, do it when you have red aces or red kings. To call 1/3 of the time, do it with red and black aces or kings. To call half the time, call when one of the cards is a spade. Your specific hand. Your pre-flop hand choices involve ranges, and if the hand you're dealt falls within your calling range, at least you know it's a profitable hand to call with in most situations. But not all hands are made equal. They hit flops differently and earn money in different ways. Before you call, answer this question: how do I plan on earning money with this hand? Pocket threes, for example, makes the most money when flopping a set. Queen-jack suited, on the other hand, earns money from flushes, straights, great 2-pair hands, or through sheer aggression when you flop a killer draw. By knowing how your hand is likely to make money, you can visualize post-flop play before you hit the call button. Types of hands and how they generally make money. Big pocket pairs make money with overpair power, backing into strong flushes and straights, and putting pressure on opponents with big bets. Medium pocket pairs make money with their slight overpair and second pair power, hitting sets and backing into straights. Small pocket pairs, they make money by hitting sets. Suited aces make money with their strong 2-pair power versus top pair hands. Any flushes they make are always the nuts, and they have the ability to put maximum pressure with nut flush draws. Suited Broadways have great flush and straight potential, strong top pair hands as well they can make. Suited Connectors have flush and straight power. They also have great two-pair value potential against overpairs. Suited Gappers have disguised straight power and flush potential. Suited Other Hands, they have flush potential and flush draw pressure can be applied when you flop that draw. And the offsuit variants of all these hands, they have little flush power but the same two-pair, top pair, and straight potential as their suited variants. Set mining math, the 20x rule. We love to hit sets on the flop and win giant pots, so pocket pairs make up a large part of most calling ranges, but we need to utilize implied odds and follow the 20x rule before set mining pre-flop. The 20x rule states, there must be 20 times the bet remaining in the effective stacks to make it worthwhile to play speculative hands. For example, if you're facing a 3 big blind bet, you want at least 60 big blinds in the stacks behind to make playing your pocket pair potentially profitable. And the 60 big blinds comes from the 3 big blind bet times the 20 rule. We follow this rule for implied odds because we want the possibility of taking down a huge pot when we hit a set. Our odds of hitting a set are only 1 of every 9 hands, or 11% of the time. Because we miss so often, 89%, we need the potential of a big payday to offset all the times we don't make any money with our set mining hands. Building a 2-bet calling range. This is a 5-step process. Step 1. Choose the parameters of the ranges you're creating. I created my ranges based on Hero's position and Villain's open raising position, and I used the KISS open raising ranges from the prior subdomino. This allowed me to calculate the calling range's equity versus the 2-better's range. A different approach could be to work through the positions, but create 2 calling ranges, one versus a loose aggressive villain, and one versus a nit villain opening from each position. But this is non-KISS, as more ranges equal greater potential confusion. Step number 2 to building a calling range. Select your value 3-bet hands. These are your default 3-bet hands that you know are positive EV to 3-bet against the open raiser. Your calling range will start just below these. Of course, they aren't set in stone and can be adjusted on the fly based on the opener and what you think they can give you value with. Step 3. Build the calling range and pay attention to its changing equity versus the open raising range. I recommend using Flopzilla and Hold EQ for this. Open 2 Flopzilla windows and connect them to one Hold EQ window. Enter in the positional open raising range in one Flopzilla window and work on building your calling range in the other. And you can see an example of this in Figure 35. Start with the strongest hands just below your 3-bet value hands and work your way down, sticking mostly to pocket pairs, suited and connected hands. Watch how your range's preflop equity changes as you add hands. Don't let it go too far below 50%, and below 40% is a definite no-no. Your bluff 3-bets are hands just below the calling range, and more on bluff 3-bets in the next subdomino. Step number 4 to building calling ranges, print and use the ranges. Use the ranges during your play sessions and focus your play around them. Take note of any hands that you feel uncomfortable playing, as well as hands you'd prefer were included that you left out. Occasionally filter through your database and see how you're performing with the ranges. And step 5, adjust your ranges. After you've had time to use the ranges, I recommend a minimum of 10,000 hands. Make any necessary changes. Then print and repeat the testing process until you're satisfied with the ranges. Statistics to track this week. The first, call preflop 2-bet. Track this as a total percentage and by position. The next stat, 3-bet preflop, total percentage and by position. Next, you want to track your total win rate for the week. You also want to track your total win rate as the preflop 2-bet caller. Track this as a total and by position. You also want to track your total win rate as the preflop 2-better, as a total and by position. And track your total win rate when 3-betting preflop, as a total and by position. Play with purpose number 1. Over the next week of play, use the 2-bet calling ranges I gave you. Make sure it's a positive EV call before you click the button. Think about the opponent you're up against, their open raising range, and the players yet to act. How do you plan to make money with your hand? What types of flops would you like to see? Visualize post-flop play before you click call. Play with purpose number 2. In every play session this week, when your 2-bet gets called, think about the range your opponent called you with. They likely don't have aces, kings, or even ace-king, but what can they have? Look at their call preflop 2-bet stat by position to put them on a range. How does this range compare with yours? What flops are good for your range and bad for theirs? Study with purpose number 1. Review your 2-bet call statistic by position for the prior month and year to date. Which positions are you calling too frequently? Good calling ranges increase as position gets later, but any position greater than 10% is a red flag, even in the big blind versus a small blind open raise. Filter for the 2-bet calls you made and analyze the calling hands in your red flag positions. Review any calling hands that fall outside of the ranges I've given you here. Ask yourself these questions with each hand you review. Was this a positive EV call? Who's the opener, and what is their range? What's the calling break-even equity needed, and does this hand have at least that much equity versus their range? How can I make money with this hand post-flop? And how are those yet to act likely to respond to my call? Study with purpose number 2. Create 2-bet calling range tiers for your opponents. Run a report in your poker tracking software that lists all of your opponents with their call preflop 2-bet percentages. Look for percentage tiers, and you can see an example of this in figure 36. For instance, you might see many opponents calling at 13%, 17%, and 22%. Build these ranges in your equity calculating software and save them for future equity calculations. And study with purpose number 3. Practice your 2-bet call break-even math and equity estimation. Also track your results. And you can see an example of this tracking with figure 37 on the images page. First, filter and review 25 preflop hands with the opportunity to call a 2-bet. Calculate the break-even equity needed to profitably call for each of these hands. Try to do the math in your head, then verify your accuracy with a calculator. Second, estimate the equity of your hand against the opponent's open raising range. You'll have to assign them an open raising range to do this. Then, use equity calculating software to verify your estimate. Subdomino 1.4 3-bet ranges. This subdomino is not a comprehensive 3-bet discussion. I'll give you the KISS 3-bet ranges by position and share with you the principles for using, adjusting, and creating these ranges. I'll dive deep into 3-betting later in this book with the third domino. Why do we create and use 3-bet ranges? There are 3 reasons for this. Number 1 is simplicity. Knowing your 3-bet hands by position ahead of time simplifies the game. You don't have to consider the merits of 3-betting the hand you're dealt. You've already done the work off the felt to know it's worth 3-betting for value or as a bluff. This frees up space for you to concentrate on other factors like the open raising opponent, players yet to act, and the table dynamics to judge if 3-betting here is positive or negative EV. The second reason, frequency. Creating ranges off the felt allows you to tailor the frequency of your 3-bets. If you're only 3-betting pocket aces and kings, your opponents will notice this and not give you any action. If you 3-bet far too often with weak ranges, they'll 4-bet or call you liberally, making poker extremely difficult for you. And the third reason, continuance. Creating 3-bet ranges forces you to think about how each hand plays post-flop. Knowing how these hands interact with various boards will help you in the heat of battle. There's a difference between 3-bet bluffing with ace-5 suited versus king-jack suited. Knowing how these two hands differ in post-flop play and board coverage will help you determine which ones to include in your 3-bet range. Here's an important note. Too many players receive ranges created by others and blindly follow them, in hopes they are the miracle answer to great preflop play. This is the last time I'm going to tell you, don't blindly follow ranges. All ranges are simply a starting point. Only bet, call, or raise a hand if it's a positive EV play. A hand within a range doesn't make it positive EV, but a hand within a range in the right situation and against the right opponent is positive EV. The KISS 3-bet ranges. The KISS 3-bet ranges follow the same pattern as the 2-bet calling ranges from the prior subdomino. They are used by position versus the open raiser's position. They were developed with the open raising ranges in mind from Subdomino 1.2. There are 6 3-bet ranges presented here, used in 11 different scenarios. With each range, I will give you some quick details including combo counts, percentage form, and the value 3-bet to bluff 3-bet ratios. The first range is the early position, cutoff, and button 3-bet range versus an early position 2-bet, and you can see this range as figure 38 in the images page. Here are the range details. 3.2% made of 42 combos. The value hands are pocket aces through queens and ace-king. The bluff hands, ace-5 suited through ace-4 suited. The value to bluff ratio is 4.25 to 1, or about 81% value. The early position open raiser is on a small, value-heavy range, so this is a purposely small 3-betting range containing very few bluffs. The value 3-bets are the 3 strongest pairs, queens through aces, and the strongest non-pair hand, ace-king. There are only 2 bluffing hands that contain ace blockers with suited and straight potential in case you get called. The next range is the button 3-bet range versus a cutoff 2-bet, and you can see this as figure 39. Here are the range details. 6.5% made of 86 combos. The value hands are aces through 10s, ace-king and ace-queen. The bluff hands are ace-5 suited through ace-deuce suited, 8-7 suited, and 7-6 suited. The value to bluff ratio, about 2.5 to 1, or 72% value. You're facing an open raise from the first steal position, so there's greater opportunity for value as well as 3-bet bluffs. Both ranges are expanded here, and the ratio is slightly bluff heavier than the prior range. The additional value hands of pocket jacks through 10s and ace-queen are intended to gain value from wider cutoff ranges that can potentially call with weaker pairs and aces. The additional suited baby aces give blocking power along with flush and straight draw power in case your 3-bet bluff gets called. The suited connectors play well post-flop and can hit deceptively strong straights, flushes, and 2-pair hands. If you're uncomfortable with bluffing so frequently, strap on them big poker pants and get to practicing. You can drop down in stakes for practice until you feel comfortable 3-betting wider ranges like this. The next range is the small blind and big blind 3-bet range versus an early position 2-bet. And you can see this as figure 40. Here are the range details. 2.4% made of 32 combos. The value hands are pocket aces and kings, along with ace-king. The bluff hand, just ace-5 suited. The value to bluff ratio is 7 to 1, or 88% value. This is the tightest 3-betting range you'll employ. The early position open raiser is on a small, value-heavy range, and you're 3-betting from out of position. The next range, small blind and big blind 3-bet range versus a cutoff 2-bet. You can see this as figure 41. Here are the range details. 6% made of 80 combos. The value hands are pocket aces down through pocket jacks, ace-king, and ace-queen. The bluff hands are ace-5 suited down through ace-deuce suited, 8-7 suited, and 7-6 suited. The value to bluff ratio is 2.3 to 1, or 70% value. 3-betting from out of position can be scary, especially when bluffing, but you're facing a wide cutoff open raising range, which can fold to a lot of your bluffs, and can call or 4-bet with worse than your value range. By utilizing the 6% 3-bet frequency, you're making it more difficult for the cutoff to easily profit from their steals. It's not your job to deny them easy steals, but it is your job to attack their wider range and earn their chips with good value and bluff 3-bets. When employing this wider range in the small blind, have an idea of how the big blind will react because their call or 4-bet can make things very difficult on your bluffing hands. The next range is the small blind and a big blind 3-bet range versus a button 2-bet. You can see this as figure 42. Here are the range details. 7.7% made of 102 combos. The value hands are pocket aces down through pocket 10s, ace-jack suited or better, ace-queen offsuit or better, king-queen suited, ace-7 suited down through ace-deuce suited, and 8-7 suited plus 7-6 suited. The value to bluff ratio is about 2.2 to 1, or 69% value. Having already posted the small blind or big blind, you're getting a good discount on your 3-bet bluffs. You're up against the widest opening range, so you can fight back even more from either position. Always pay attention to your opponent's raise then fold to 3-bet stat by position when you make the 3-bet steal. Again, before using this range in the small blind, have an idea of how your big blind opponent will react. And from the big blind, you only have to worry about the button opener, unless the small blind called or somebody limped before the button raised. And the final range, the big blind 3-bet range versus a small blind 2-bet. You can see this as figure 43. Here are the range details. 10.1% made of 134 combos. The value hands are pocket aces down through pocket tens, ace-king through ace-jack, and king-queen. The bluff hands are ace-7 suited through ace-deuce suited, 8-6 suited, 7-6 suited, 6-5 suited, and 7-5 suited. The value to bluff ratio is 2.4 to 1, or 70% value. Small blind open raising ranges can be extremely wide, and because you're 3-betting them in position, it's a great opportunity to add more value and bluffing hands to the range. Plus, you're still getting that great 1 big blind discount. This is the only inclusion of suited gappers as 3-bet bluffing hands. Being that you're in position versus a wide range, this is a great opportunity to practice bluffing with hands you've possibly never 3-bet before. Polarized ranges. The KISS ranges I just gave you are examples of polarized ranges. They contain a mixture of value hands and bluffs that are weaker and outside of the 2-bet calling ranges. Some players 3-bet depolarized ranges. This means that their range consists of value and near value hands. Figure 44 shows two 6% 3-bet ranges, polarized on the left and depolarized on the right. The polarized one contains pocket jacks or better, and ace-king along with ace-queen, and the bluffing hands are ace-5 suited through ace-deuce suited, and 8-7 suited and 7-6 suited. The depolarized range on the right contains aces down through tens, ace-10 suited or better, ace-queen offsuit or better, king-queen suited, and queen-jack suited. I prefer polarized ranges as I like a clear delineation between my value and bluff hands. When 3-bet bluffing hands just outside of your value ranges, like ace-jack suited and ace-10 suited, you may be tempted to call and put yourself in a dominated position when your opponent is 4-betting with ace-king or ace-queen. It's easier to fold bluffing hands like ace-5 suited and 7-6 suited when caught. You can download a one-sheet with these 3-bet ranges by going to www.smartpokerstudy.com/v1-3bet-ranges, and you can find a link to this on the images page. Using the KISS ranges, 3-betting principles. The following principles will help you use the KISS ranges in a profitable manner. Later in the third domino, I'll dive even further into the art and science of 3-betting. Why are you 3-betting? Betting for no good reason is a leak too many poker players have. I can't tell you how many times I've 3-bet just because the open raiser has a wide range, so I've got to 3-bet. Actions like this leads to your opponents profiting from your chip spew. Profitable poker involves having a good reason for every chip you throw at the pot. Mistakes are costlier as pots grow in size, so it's critical that you know why you're making the 3-bet. There are only 3 reasons to 3-bet preflop. 1 is for value, 2 for isolation, or 3 as a bluff. First, betting for value. A value bet is a bet with the expectation that your opponent can continue with worse by calling or raising. If you've reasoned through their range and know they can pay you off with worse hands, you make the value bet to earn their chips. Value 3-bets are made with the idea that your opponent open-raised with a range of hands, and from that initial range, they can call your 3-bet or 4-bet with worse hands. If your opponent will only call or 4-bet with better hands, then you made a failed value 3-bet. A common example of this is when an opponent will only continue with pocket queens or better, and you 3-bet for value with pocket jacks. The next reason to 3-bet is for isolation. An isolation bet is made for the potential of playing in a post-flop money-making situation with a weaker player. If you call, others will potentially call behind, and it's no longer the situation you had hoped for. Sometimes you 3-bet isolate against a tight aggressive who folds quickly on the flop, or the maniac who raised and can't fold any pair post-flop. Whoever it is, you 3-bet with the intention of getting heads up on the flop with this specific player. 3-betting for isolation like this has 2 additional benefits. Number 1, sometimes they fold and award you the pot. Number 2, 3-betting instead of calling takes away a profitable bluff squeezing opportunity for other players who are yet to act. And the third reason to 3-bet is to do it as a bluff. Bluffing is betting with the intention of getting your opponent to fold a better hand. Pure and simple, bluff bets want folds. 3-bet bluffing hands fall outside of calling ranges. If your hand is worth seeing the flop with, make the call instead. If you 3-bet bluff and your opponent counters with a 4-bet, they're saying to you, "Your bluff's no good here, take that crap down the road." In general, don't continue the bluff when your opponent throws it back at you with a 4-bet. Calling 4-bets and 5-betting are normally reserved for value, not bluffing at the micro and low stakes. And more on this in Subdomino 3.1. When to 3-bet. Great 3-bets have a high likelihood of yielding the results you want, which is gaining value, successfully bluffing, or isolating your intended opponent. Just because a hand falls within your range doesn't make it a good 3-bet. Consider the open raiser you're 3-betting against. You must utilize any HUD stats and history you have with them before 3-betting, even when 3-betting with pocket aces. If the opponent's fold to 3-bet is at 90%, that means they only continue with a very small range. You want value with your pocket aces, but 3-betting is likely to result in a fold, and all you earn is the 4.5 big blind. That's not a bad thing, as any chips won is good, but it's not as good as it could be. In this situation, consider a smaller 3-bet in an effort to keep the open raiser in, or to elicit a 4-bet from another player. Or you can call and keep the open raiser's entire range in the hand. This does run the risk of other players calling behind, though. If you're considering a 3-bet bluff, you want to know that your opponent can fold. That same opponent who folds to 3-bets 90% is ripe for a 3-bet bluff. If you're attempting an isolation 3-bet, try to do it as cheaply as possible if you don't have a value hand. For example, a station-y whale opens the pot from the hijack, and you're in the cutoff with ace-8 suited. The players yet to act have been calling a lot, so you can expect a cascade of calls behind you. But you want this juicy open raiser all to yourself post-flop. Folding or calling won't achieve that, so you're left with the isolation 3-bet. Try to size your raise to the pain threshold of the players yet to act so they don't call, but don't go too big and waste chips in case you get 4-bet. It's a delicate balance that takes practice to achieve, and more on sizing in a little bit. You need to give post-flop play some thought before you click raise. Visualize how the hand could play out if you get to the flop. What kind of boards help your hand, and what boards help your opponent's range? Does the opponent fight for 3-bet pots post-flop, or are they quick to give up when they strike out? You'll sometimes find yourself at a table that does not respect 3-bets, meaning the 3-bet hardly ever takes the pot down pre-flop. It can be full of whales that love to call 3-bets and see flops, or full of lags and maniacs who refuse to fold their open-raising hands. If your table doesn't respect 3-bets, be inclined towards strictly 3-betting for value. But on nitty tables full of tags, tagfish, and nits, feel free to 3-bet bluff more frequently. If they let you get away with it, it would be a shame to not earn the dead money in the pot. Be aware of your image at the table. How your opponents think of you will have an effect on how they respond to your 3-bets. If you've 3-bet 5 times in the past 5 minutes, your next 3-bet is less likely to win the pot. Conversely, if your opponents are paying attention and you have folded every hand in the prior 6 orbits, they'll see your 3-bet as a sign of strength. Facing 4-bets. What do you do when your opponent throws it back at you with a 4-bet? If you are 3-betting for isolation or as a bluff, the best play is to fold. Don't often 5-bet bluff because your opponents rarely 4-bet bluff. You aren't going for value, so most hands they're 4-betting with have your hand crushed unless you've seen them 4-bet bluff a lot of hands in the past. Give up the 9-ish big blinds and move on. If they use a very small sizing, you're getting good odds to continue. A min 4-bet over a 9 big blind 3-bet means the 3-better only needs 20% preflop equity to make a mathematically break-even call. But you are bluffing, so don't turn your bluff into a value-giving hand. They likely want you to continue because of that small sizing, so you're giving them what they want. If, on the other hand, you are 3-betting for value, hopefully you already put thought into their 4-bet range. Are they only 4-betting hands better than yours? If so, fold. If they're capable of value 4-betting with worse, like pocket queens and jacks when you hold pocket kings, or if they're capable of bluff 4-betting, then you've got to make a decision. you can call with your value hand to keep all their bluffs and weaker hands in and take the hand through the streets. This has the benefit of gaining more value from them post-flop. Of course, 5-betting for value with the intent of getting it in, either with a 5-bet shove, calling their 6-bet shove, or re-shoving as a 7-bet, those are all absolutely fine as long as you know they can get it in with worse hands. Before committing your entire stack, take a look at your notes to see what they've gone all in with in the past. If you've noted raising wars with pocket 10s and ace-queen, that's a great sign. But if the only hands they've gone all in with before are aces and kings, and you hold queens, then getting it in is a bad idea. 3-bet sizing and break-even math. We normally reference the size of a 3-bet in relation to the size of the 2-bet. If your opponent 2-bet to 3 big blinds, and you 3-bet to 9 big blinds, you made a 3x 3-bet. The bigger the 3-bet, the larger the risk. But you're not only risking the loss of your 3-bet when you get called or face a 4-bet. Consider also that you're risking more chips post-flop in these larger 3-bet pots. C-bets, calls, and raises are more costly in 3-bet pots, and this means mistakes are more costly. When 3-bet bluffing, you're looking to hit the opponent's pain threshold, but not exceeding it. If they readily fold to 2.5x 3-bets, then you're risking more than necessary if you make it 3x. If going for value, use the largest sizing your opponent is capable of calling, which is just under their pain threshold. If the opponent calls 3.5x 3-bets, then you're missing out on value with your pocket aces when you 3-bet to only 3x. Bigger 3-bets elicit more folds, but they have to work more often to break even. You can see a graph of this with figure 45. A small 2x 3-bet bluff needs to work only 57% of the time, but a standard 3x 3-bet bluff needs to work 67% of the time to break even. I recommend using 3x sizing when in position and 3.5 to 4x when out of position. For example, a 3-bet from the button versus a cutoff 3 big blind open raise would be 9 big blinds, and from the blinds, it would be 10.5 to 12 big blinds. Treat squeeze sizing like an isolation raise by adding 1x or more for each caller you're facing, and going one level higher for out-of-position squeezes. If squeezing from the button versus a raise and one caller, make it 4x, which is 3x, plus 1 for the caller. If squeezing from the blinds versus a raiser and 2 callers, make it 6x or greater, which is 4x, plus 1x per caller. Building 3-bet ranges. This is a 5-step process. Step 1. Match the same parameters you used for 2-bet calling ranges. Once again, I created ranges based on hero's position and villain's open raising position, and the ranges I gave you back in Subdomino 1.2. Step 2. Choose your value 3-bet range for each position. You've already done this when creating your 2-bet calling ranges in Subdomino 1.3. You can make changes now if you want, but those 3-bet value hands are fine to continue working with. Step 3 to creating 3-bet ranges, choose your bluff 3-bet hands. Your bluff 3-bet hands must be outside of the 2-bet calling hands you chose in Subdomino 1.3. If the weakest suited connector you want to call with is 9-8 suited, then 8-7 suited can be one of the bluffing hands you choose. Good bluffing hands have suited and connected power, board coverage, and in the case of those suited aces, good blocking power as well. Build your 3-bet bluffing range to no more than 30% of your total 3-bet range. For example, you chose 70 value 3-bet combos. Then at most you want 30 bluff 3-bet combos. Step 4. Print and use the ranges. Use the ranges during your play sessions and focus your play around them. Take note of any hands that you feel uncomfortable playing, as well as hands you'd prefer were included that you left out. Occasionally filter through your database and see how you're performing with the ranges. And step 5, adjust your ranges. After you've had time to use the ranges, I recommend a minimum of 20,000 hands for 3-bet ranges. Make any necessary changes, then print and repeat the testing process until you're satisfied with the ranges. Statistics to track this week. You're going to track your call preflop 2-bet as a total and by position, your 3-bet preflop as a total and by position, your win rate as the preflop 3-better. You also want to track your raise then fold stat, your raise then call stat, and your raise then 4-bet stat to see how you're playing against 3-bets. Play with purpose number 1. Use the KISS 3-bet ranges here, or build your own, for every session you play this week. Print them out and keep them in front of you. Assess the 3-bet EV before you click the raise button. If you think it's a negative EV 3-bet, for whatever reason, don't make it. Fold or call instead. Create a custom tag called 3-bet hands and use it to review every 3-bet you make. Also, tag hands with your poker tracking software where you considered making the 3-bet but chose not to. Play with purpose number 2. Play 3 focus sessions this week where you use a tick sheet to record the purpose for every bet or raise, not only 3 bets. Simply put value, ISO, and bluff on the sheet and make a tick below each before you make your play. This practice will get you focused on knowing your why for every button click, making you a stronger, more thoughtful player. And in case you don't know, focus sessions are where you play at most 2 tables for 30 to 45 minutes, and you're intently focused on putting one new strategy to practice at every opportunity. And play with purpose number 3. During your play sessions this week, before you make a value 3-bet, verbalize the hands that your opponent can call or 4-bet you with. Based on the hands they can have, visualize how you'll approach the flop if they call, and plan your reaction to their 4-bet. Study with purpose number 1. For every study session this week, review 5 tagged 3-bet hands from the previous play session. Was your 3-bet a positive EV play? If going for value, what hands would the villain give you value with by calling or 4-betting? If bluffing, what hands could you get to fold with your 3-bet? For either case, do you think your sizing was accurate enough to get the job done? Study with purpose number 2. Spend 1 session reviewing 3-bet opportunities with the bluffing hands from the ranges I gave you. Create and save a special filter within your poker tracking software so you can go back and review the hands at the end of the week. You can also use it right now to review hands from the past. Here are the filter details. Filter for these 3-bet bluffing hands: Ace-Deuce suited through Ace-7 suited, 8-7 suited through 6-5 suited, 8-6 suited through 7-5 suited. Filter for the opportunity to 3-bet over any preflop 2-bet. Save this filter as KISS 3-bet bluffing opportunities. As you review the filtered hands, look for good 3-bet bluffing opportunities that you passed on. Why did you not make the 3-bet bluff? How would your opponents have likely reacted? With the 3-bet sizing you would have chosen, how often did it have to work? And do your opponents fold that often? Also, look at instances where you called with these hands, so add a call 2-bet filter. Were these positive EV calls? Would you have earned the pot with a 3-bet bluff? And study with purpose number 3. Run range versus range calculations for all 6 3-bet ranges I gave you, versus the range you think your opponent is calling with. For example, your 3-bet range is pocket aces through queens, ace-king, ace-5 suited, and ace-4 suited from the early position versus an early position open raise. Maybe you think this early position player, who opens with the 12% range from subdomino 1.2, will call your 3-bet with pocket queens through 10s, ace-king, and ace-queen. Using an equity calculating software, it tells you that your preflop equity in this situation is 59%. This is a great situation for you, in position, with a stronger range, in a bigger pot, and you can see this as figure 46. Now that you know the equity, change your 3-bet range in the equity calculator. What is the new equity if you added pocket jacks to your value range? What about jacks and 10s? What's the new equity if you added ace-3 suited to your bluff range? What about 8-7 suited? Run these situations over and over, making slight changes to your 3-bet range and your opponent's calling range in an effort to better acquaint yourself with changing equities. Take notes on your findings. Subdomino 1.5 3-bet defense ranges. What is a 3-bet defense? This is fighting back when facing a 3-bet after making a 2-bet pre-flop. This domino is going to give you strong ranges with which to respond to the inevitable 3-bets headed your way. I followed the KISS principle once again in creating these ranges. I didn't plan for every possibility, as there are way too many. We could be 3-bet by a lag, a maniac, a nit, or even a whale. The sizing can also be all over the place. Min 3-bets, 3x 3-bets, 5x 3-bets, or even crazy 33x overshove 3-bets. We're keeping it simple and utilizing ranges for the most common situation, facing a 3-bet from an in-position or an out-of-position player who has some bluffs in their 3-bet range. The KISS 3-bet defense ranges. These ranges consist of 4-bet value and bluff hands, as well as 3-bet calling hands that have good equity against your opponent's 3-bet ranges. There are a minimal amount of 4-bet bluffing hands in these ranges. 4-betting commits often a quarter of your stack to the pot, so it isn't something you will do too often. It's absolutely situational and player dependent. The first range is the early position defense versus an in-position 3-bet. And you can see this as figure 47 on the images page. Here are the range details. It's 4.7% made of 62 combos. You value 4-bet with pocket kings or greater for 12 combos. There are no 4-bet bluffing hands. You call the 3-bet with pocket queens through pocket tens and ace queen or greater for 50 total combos. The call to 4-bet ratio is 4.2 to 1 or 81% calls. With this range, you're folding to the 3-bet 62% of the time when you're opening with the 162 combo early position range from Subdomino 1.2. Many of your opponents are going to put you on a strong range when you open from EP, so their 3-bets are often weighted toward value. Because of this, your value 4-bet range is the ever-present pocket kings and pocket aces. There are no 4-bet bluffs in this range, although that doesn't mean you can't choose to 4-bet bluff. That's up to you and your assessment of the EV nature of making a 4-bet bluff. The calling hands give great equity against 3-bet ranges that contain many ace-x hands, broadways, and medium pocket pairs. The next range, an early position defense versus a blind 3-bet. You can see this as figure 48. Here are the range details. 5.3% made of 70 combos. You will value 4-bet with pocket kings or pocket aces for 12 combos. There are no bluff 4-betting hands. You will call the 3-bet with pocket queens through tens, ace queen or greater, ace jack suited, and king queen suited for 58 combos. The call to 4-bet ratio is 4.8 to 1 or 83% calls. You will fold to the 3-bet 57% of the time when you're using the 162 combo early position range from Subdomino 1.2. Your tight early position open raising range can defend a little more frequently with calls due to your post-flop position. The 4-bet hands are the same as the prior range, because your opponents probably still view your early position range as very strong. The next range, the cutoff defense versus an in-position 3-bet. You can see this as figure 49. Here are the range details. 6.6% made of 88 combos. You will value 4-bet with pocket queens or greater and ace-king suited for 22 combos. You'll bluff 4-bet with ace-5 suited and ace-4 suited for 8 combos. You will call the 3-bet with jacks through nines, ace-king offsuit, ace-queen, ace-jack suited, king-queen suited, and king-jack suited for 58 combos. The call to 4-bet ratio is 1.9 to 1, or 66% calls. With this range, you'll fold to the 3-bet 67% of the time, and this is when you're opening with the 266 combo cutoff range from Subdomino 1.2. Both 4-betting and calling ranges are wider here due to the button using their position and your wide cutoff opening range against you. You have some bluff 4-betting hands in this range, and your value 4-bets expanded with pocket queens and ace-king suited. You can't only increase your 4-bet range though, so your calling range has expanded to include more of the better Broadway hands. You're out of position on the flop if you do call their 3-bet, and that's a consideration. Don't auto-click call solely because a hand is in your calling range. Consider the EV nature, either positive or negative, of calling this hand from out of position. The next range is the cutoff defense versus a blind 3-bet. You can see this as figure 50. Here are the range details. 9.1% made of 120 combos. You will value 4-bet with pocket queens or greater and ace-king for 34 combos. You'll bluff 4-bet with ace-5 suited and ace-4 suited for 8 combos. You'll call the 3-bet with jacks through nines, ace-queen, ace-jack, ace-10 suited, king-queen, king-jack suited, and queen-jack suited for 78 combos. The call to 4-bet ratio is 1.9 to 1, or 65% calls. With this range, you'll be folding to the 3-bet 55% of the time. Now that's when you're opening with the 266 combo cutoff range from Subdomino 1.2. You're in a steal position facing potential 3-bet steals, so more frequent defense is necessary. I've added ace-king offsuit for value, and kept the bluffing hands to only ace-5 suited and ace-4 suited. You have positional advantage over the 3-better, and you'll use this to call more hands. This expanded calling range includes some offsuit broadways and more suited broadways. The next range, the button defense versus a blind 3-bet. You can see this as figure 51. Here are the range details. 13.1% made of 174 combos. You will value 4-bet with pocket jacks or greater and ace-king for 40 combos. You'll bluff 4-bet with ace-5 suited and ace-4 suited for 8 combos. You will call the 3-bet with pocket 10s down through 6s, ace-queen and ace-jack, ace-10 suited through ace-8 suited, king-queen, king-jack suited through king-10 suited, and suited connectors queen-jack suited through 7-6 suited, and one suited gapper, queen-10 suited, for 126 total combos. The call to 4-bet ratio is 2.6 to 1, or 72% calls. With this range, you will fold to the 3-bet 58% of the time, and that's when you're opening with the 414 button range from Subdomino 1.2. This is your widest open raising range and your widest 3-bet defense. Your blind opponents expect you to steal a lot, so they fight back with plenty of 3-bet steals. Make sure you review their 3-bet steal stat by position, because it can vary greatly from small blind to the big blind. Utilize this stat before you decide to defend with a 4-bet or a call. Your ultimate post-flop position is great, but don't rely on this to justify calling too frequently. Some of your most profitable opponents call 3-bets too often, then give up all their equity on the flop or turn. Don't be like your whale opponents. Choose instead to only call with positive EV hands. Now the final range, the small blind defense versus a big blind 3-bet. You can see this as figure 52 on the images page. Here are the range details. 7.7%, 102 combos. You will value 4-bet with pocket jacks or greater and ace-king for 40 combos. Bluff 4-bet with ace-5 suited and ace-4 suited for 8 combos. You'll call the 3-bet with 10s through 8s, ace-queen, ace-jack suited, king-queen suited through jack-10 suited, and king-jack suited for 54 combos. The call to 4-bet ratio is 1.1 to 1, or 53% calls. With this range, you will fold to the 3-bet 62% of the time, and that's when you're opening with the 266 small blind range from Subdomino 1.2. This can get intense sometimes with bluffs from each player, so this range is keeping things pretty tight, but there's plenty of room for exploitation, especially if you know your big blind opponent very well. You're defending in the small blind out of position, so that will sway you to err on the side of caution when committing extra chips to the pot. But if it's a great positive EV opportunity to bluff or call, take it. KISS Cash Game Ranges PDF. For the prior 3 subdominoes, I gave you the ranges in one-page PDFs. Now, here are all 4 sets of ranges, the open raise, the 2-bet call, the 3-bet, and the 3-bet defense, all rolled into one, the KISS Cash Game Ranges PDF. It's an easy-to-use one-sheet that you can print and use in every online session. This is also the bonus offered at the front of the book. If you haven't already downloaded it, go to www.smartpokerstudy.com/v1-kiss-ranges. The benefits of a frequent defense. Some of these ranges have you defending at 45% of the time, which means you're folding to the 3-bet at 55%. That may seem like a lot, but these ranges were created to give you a few benefits. Benefit number 1. They call for more frequent defense when you have post-flop position. This is a great advantage in 3-bet or greater pots. Benefit 2. They allow you to profit from the loose aggressive and maniac's overuse of aggression. These opponents 3-bet far more frequently than you do with broadways, medium to small pocket pairs, random ace hands, and connectors or gappers. These KISS 3-bet defense ranges give you great equity when calling, and they'll get many of these weaker holdings to fold against your 4-bet. And benefit number 3, they discourage future 3-bet bluffs. If your aggressive 3-betting opponents notice that you don't often fold, they'll have less reason to 3-bet bluff you. Hopefully this results in more preflop pots taken down and more flops reached as the preflop raiser with initiative, which is bread and butter if you are in position. 4-bet sizing. Most 3-bets are 3x to 4x your open sizing. At an open raise to 3 big blinds, you'll face 9 to 12 big blind 3-bets. I recommend a 2.2x 4-bet sizing for both value and bluff 4-bets. This will make most of your 4-bets between 20 and 25 big blinds. If you go too much bigger, you're making it easy for your opponent to decide whether or not they want to play for their entire stack. Going with a smaller sizing will make it so your bluffs will work less often. At 2.2x sizing and 100 big blind effective stacks, your opponent will feel there's still a little room to maneuver post-flop, so it's possible they can call with dominated hands. Also, because it appears you may not exactly be committed when 4-betting to 20 big blinds, for example, they can come in for a 5-bet bluff shove, which you snap off with your value hand. 4-bet bluffing break-even math. How often does a 4-bet at 2.2x need to work? Try to calculate this with the following example. Here's the scenario. Calculating the 4-bet break-even point. Hero opens to 3 big blinds in the cutoff. Villain 3-bets to 9 big blinds on the button. It folds back around to Hero. Hero is considering a 2.2x 4-bet bluff of 20 big blinds. At this size, what's the 4-bet bluff break-even point? The break-even formula is the size of the bet divided by the total pot with the bet included. The break-even percentage in this scenario is 56%. If Villain is folding more than that, it's a positive EV 4-bet bluff. Here's the math. Hero's risking an additional 17 big blinds, beyond the 3 big blind open raise, to win a total pot of 30.5 big blinds. 17 divided by 30.5 equals 56%. Most of your 4-bet bluffs will need to work between 55 and 60% of the time, and you can see this as figure 53 on the images page. There's a perfect HUD stat to help you gauge how often your opponents fold to 4-bets. It's called Fold to Preflop 4-bet after 3-bet. Make sure this is in one of your HUD pop-ups. Using the KISS ranges, 3-bet defense factors. Before making your 3-bet defense decision, be sure you know what you're getting into. You're committing lots of preflop chips when you call, and even more when 4-betting. Taking into account the following 6 factors will help you answer the question, is this a positive EV opportunity to defend against a 3-bet? Your answer will guide you to the correct button-clicking option of fold, call, or raise. Factor number 1, your hand. Is your hand within your 3-bet defense range? If not, be highly predisposed to simply folding it. You've already determined the correct defense frequency and selected worthy hands to fill that frequency. You chose to not include this hand in that range, so it's not worthy of calling. Consider the potential of realizing your hand's equity before defending. A hand like pocket deuces has the necessary preflop equity based on pot odds to call a typical 3-bet, but it has very little chance of making it through the flop, turn, and river to ultimately get to showdown against a 3-bet range. On the other hand, pocket aces or 10-9 suited have much greater opportunity due to either the absolute strength they possess or the potential of hitting good draws on a variety of boards. Pocket deuces really only hits if a 2 is on the board, and any straight draws or flush draws are very weak and hard to put too much money in with. Hands with low realized equity are better off folded when facing a 3-bet. A great question to ask yourself before you put a hand in your range is, how does this hand make money? The more ways it can earn money, the higher realized equity potential it has. So low pocket pairs like deuces through 5s, those are hard to make money with unless you hit a set, and it's often too costly to set mine in 3-bet pots. Suited hands realize their preflop equity far better than offsuit hands due to their flush potential. And connected hands earn more money than gapped hands, and gapped hands more than double gappers, and so on. But there may be other factors, which we'll get to in just a little bit, that can make defending with this hand in this situation a positive EV decision. If you determine logically that it's positive EV to defend, then do so. The second factor when defending against a 3-bet, the 3-better's tendencies and history. Your response must be dictated in part on how frequently your opponent makes aggressive pre-flop 3-bets. In general, you attack weakness and avoid strength. Versus a tag, lag, or maniac who you know 3-bets too frequently, you can 4-bet and call with wider value ranges. Versus a nit or whale who 3-bets rarely with only the best hands, like pocket kings and aces, you must fold most of your hands. Use your opponent's HUD stats and keep notes on the hands you've seen your opponent 3-bet with in the past. Every bit of info you have access to will only serve to improve your reaction to their 3-bets. Also, take a quick peek at your opponent's post-flop HUD stats in 3-bet pots to see what you can expect to face if the hand gets to the flop. The third factor, the size of the 3-bet. The size determines the pot odds you're being offered to continue with a call. If you're getting the right price against the 3-better's range, then you can make the call. The smaller the 3-bet you face, the more often you can call. The bigger the 3-bet, the more preflop equity your hand needs due to the worsening pot odds being offered. The size of the bet can also tell you the intentions of the 3-better. Take note of any 3-bet sizing tells that you spot. You might see that Sam123 makes 4x 3-bets for value, but 2.5x 3-bets when bluffing. You use this information to your advantage. The fourth factor, the 3-better's range. The prior two factors, tendencies and history, along with sizing, give you important information that will help you put your opponent on a 3-bet range of hands. They're 3-betting for a reason. Ask yourself what it is. Are they only 3-betting for value, or do they also have bluffs in their range? In general, a 3-bet stat below 5% is a value-heavy range, and you can see this in figure 54, as pocket 10s or greater and ace-queen or greater. Anything above 5% includes weaker hands, growing exponentially weaker the higher it goes. Figure 55 shows a bluff-heavy 10% range. This is pocket 8s or greater, ace-queen offsuit or greater, ace-9 suited or greater, king-10 suited or greater, and suited connectors queen-jack suited, jack-10 suited, and 10-9 suited. Now that you know their range, how does your hand fare against it? Does it have enough preflop equity to make the call? Or is it so bad that the best plays are to fold or 4-bet bluff? And the fifth factor in defending against 3-bets. In position versus out of position. Position is an important factor. When you have post-flop positional advantage, you could defend with 4-bets and calls more liberally. And when out of position, you must tighten up. Position is the advantage in poker, and it's even more valuable in 3-bet pots. And the sixth factor for 3-bet defense is stack-to-pot ratio, or SPR. SPR is the size of the remaining stack to the size of the pot. If both players started with 100 big blind stacks, and both put in 10 big blinds in a 3-bet pot, the size of the pot will be about 20 big blinds on the flop. With 90 big blind stacks remaining, the SPR on the flop is about 90 to 20, or 4.5. Players feel more committed in low stack-to-pot ratio situations, and in 3-bet or greater pots, the SPR is likely going to be very low. Players begin to feel pot committed at an SPR of 3 to 4. Look at your opponent's stack before you call or 4-bet. If they're already pot committed, then don't 4-bet bluff, but 4-bet shove for value instead. If you're contemplating a call, and the flop pot will be so large that there's no chance of bluffing them, weigh this into your decision before you call with non-pair hands. If you need to hit the flop hard, or you'll be forced to fold to the c-bet, just fold preflop and save yourself the 3-bet calling chips. Building 3-bet defenses. This is a 6-step process. Step 1. Know your open raising ranges by position. You can use the KISS cash game ranges I gave you, or use ones you created in Subdomino 1.2. Step 2. Determine your 3-bet defense frequency by position. You need to defend a minimum of 30% of the time to try and make your opponents indifferent to 3-bet bluffing you. This means they see no profit in 3-bet bluffing because you don't fold often enough. Decide how often you want to defend by position. You can keep it simple and target 33 defense across the board, and as you build the ranges, adjust them up or down depending on whether you're in position or out of position. Step 3. Build your total 3-bet defense range. Multiply the number of combos in your open raising range by 33%. This is the number of combos in your 3-bet defense range. Using an equity calculating software, begin inputting hands until you reach your desired defensive combo count. This is your entire 4-bet and calling range combined. Begin each range with pocket queens or greater and ace-king suited. Then add hand after hand until you reach your defense frequency. This is where you'll have to make some decisions about which hands you'll want to include, like potential calling and 4-bet bluffing hands. When it comes to 4-bet bluffing hands to choose from, start with suited baby aces for their blocking, straight, and flush power. Ace-5 suited through ace-deuce suited are great for this. If you want to add more, next select suited connectors like 8-7 suited or 7-6 suited, and offsuit Broadway hands like king-queen offsuit and king-jack offsuit. These give you some blocking power and straight potential. Jump ahead to Subdomino 3.4 on 3-bet defense for more about 4-bet bluffing hands. Step 4. Divide the range between calls and 4-bets. Consider the range that's 3-betting you and choose your 4-bet value hands. Next, select calling hands with good preflop equity. Lastly, determine your 4-bet bluffing hands, if any. In the KISS 3-bet defense ranges I gave you, calls made up anywhere from 53% to 83% of the range. The ratio is up to you. What matters is the equity your calling hands and 4-betting hands have against the 3-betters range. Step 5. Print and use the ranges. Use the ranges during your play sessions and focus your play around them. Take note of any hands that you feel uncomfortable playing, as well as hands you'd prefer were included that you left out. Occasionally, filter through your database and see how you're performing with the ranges. And step 6. Adjust your ranges. After you've had time to use the ranges, I recommend a minimum of 20,000 hands for 3-bet defense ranges. Make any necessary changes. Then print and repeat the testing process until you're satisfied with the ranges. Statistics to track this week. First, raise first in. Track this as a total and by position. You also want to track your raise then 4-bet, raise then call, and raise then fold stats. All of these as a total and by position. Record your win rate when you raise then 4-bet, also your win rate when you raise then call. Play with purpose number 1. Play 3 30-minute focus sessions of 1 to 2 tables, where your goal is to evaluate the EV nature of defending against every 3-bet you face. Take the time to review your opponent's stats regardless of your holdings, so don't simply auto-fold hands like Jack-9 suited and Ace-7 offsuit. Verbalize your opponent's 3-bet range. You probably already know what you're going to do, but take the time to consider and weigh the merits of value 4-betting, bluff 4-betting, or calling with each 3-bet you face. Tag all hands where you defended against a 3-bet with a call or a 4-bet for later review. Play with purpose number 2. Record 3 30-minute game tape sessions where your focus is on the above step number 1. Speak through your decisions and list the reasons why you've chosen your play. In case you don't know, game tape is my number 1 recommended study method. Use a screen capture software and a microphone to record your online play and decision making. Speak through your decisions as you make them. Review the game tape in a study session to uncover mistakes, gaps in logic, reasons for tilt, and opponent exploits. I discuss utilizing game tape in detail in How to Study Poker Volume 1, Chapter 17, or you can listen to a podcast episode number 136 at www.smartpokerstudy.com/pod136. And play with purpose number 3. Over your next 5 play sessions, use the KISS cash game ranges to aid in your preflop hand choices. Up to this point, you've been focused on one area at a time. Now you'll put to use all you've learned about the ranges and adapting to your opponents. It's critical to not follow ranges blindly. Have a good, positive EV expectation behind every play you make, regardless of your hand falling within or outside of the ranges. Study with purpose number 1. Review your tagged 3-bet defense hands. Answer these questions. Was this a positive EV defense, and why? If it was a negative EV play, what information did you overlook in the moment that allowed for this mistake? And the final question, how will you avoid this mistake in the future? Study with purpose number 2. Run a report in your poker tracking software and name it 4-bet bluff targets. Add the following stats to the report: VPIP, PFR, 3-bet preflop, and 3-bet then fold, which is also called fold to preflop 4-bet after 3-bet. Add the following filters to the report to whittle it down to good 4-bet bluffing targets: the number of hands greater than 1,000, PFR greater than 20, 3-bet preflop greater than 8, fold to preflop 4-bet after 3-bet greater than 56. The resulting player names are ripe for 4-bet bluffs. Is your name on that report? Oh no! What are you going to do about it? Make a note on any players in the report and try 4-bet bluffing them the next time you meet them at the tables. And study with purpose number 3. Review each of your 30-minute game tape recordings. Listen to yourself explain your thought process as you make your decisions. Is your logic sound? Are you verbalizing your opponent's 3-bet ranges? If so, now that you're off the felt, do you think you were accurate? Take the time to consider what range they're 3-betting with. Are you thinking through your actions before making them? Are you planning for your opponent's reaction to your play? Are you utilizing the HUD and all information available to make positive EV plays?